Yeah. Well, that's some alcoholic at $25.
Okay. All right, call the meeting to order. 6:07. Some announcements. Mill Pond is having an open house this Saturday from 10 to 2. They're, because they typically have their winter carnival, so weather dependent, they've had to cancel the last few years. So this is just an open house. You don't have to do any planned activities. They're just serving hot chocolate. They're roasting marshmallows. They're gonna have a fire sanctioned by the fire department. From 10 to 2, so stop by. Nomination papers are available for local offices. Contact the town clerk's office. Final day to obtain the papers is March 14th, and then they need to be returned with 26 signatures, is that right? By March 18th.
Jim, do you post, papers that have been received or nomination papers that have been taken?
I don't, but I can.
Yeah, does anybody think that would be worthwhile information?
Sure. Where would you post that, on the town clerk's?
Oh, yeah,
page?
that's generally where I post
Yeah.
election stuff.
Right. That's really it for new announcements. Item A, public comment. Is there anybody here or online that wishes to make a public comment? Right, none. We'll move on to item B. Consent agenda. I decided we're gonna take a pause on this, because it's not really saving us much time. And I don't want to squash conversation, questions if they're needed. So we're just gonna leave it on there in case we get to the point where we have so many items that can be easily voted on. We can go back to it. Town manager updates.
All right, thank you. The first item is budget update. As you know, with the original budget schedule, it had called for a presentation of the budget tonight. Due to a number of factors that you have lived through, as have I, that was not only not feasible, it wasn't possible. So I had gotten Wendy's blessing a little while back to focus on the articles. And so that became really the centerpiece for tonight's meeting, is the closing of the warrant and putting together the article packets and the article request form. So we have put together an updated budget calendar, which calls for presentation of the budget in 6 nights, the board's February 12th meeting. So that's what you can expect there. We sent out updated schedule to all the departments. We did receive late last week the Pawtucket budget, and what I was going to do just briefly is talk about basically the sections of the budget that are still the most in flux. In some ways, everything that's other than a imposed number, like a assets retirement or debt service or health insurance, there are certain numbers that are they are what they are. Beyond that, there's some kind of policy decisions, or at least recommendations that I make in the budget I bring forward as to what I'm going to bring forward, what I'm not. They're really difficult to make until you have the whole bottom line, because you don't know, I don't know what, how close or far I am from hitting that bottom line target till I receive everything. So some of the bigger moving parts at this stage are public safety, particularly where we have a couple of collective bargaining agreements that are due to be expired at the end of the fiscal year. That becomes kind of a policy decision as to understanding that those certainly won't be settled in 6 nights and may well not be settled by town meeting. It becomes a decision of what do we carry for budgeting purposes that we think is a good faith representation of to the voters as to what we actually think the personnel costs will be in those unionized departments. The schools very much in flux right now. We did get the Pawtucket budget book late last week. That's posted to our website as well as to theirs. The state mandated minimum went up to a degree that alone, I'm told from my counterparts in Groveland and Merrimack, is going to push at least Groveland and possibly both of those towns to an override, just based on the state required mandatory minimum. So there's a lot of angst. We just got those, we had a meeting with the superintendent and business manager on Thursday, and they posted the budget book to their website on Friday. So that's something that is causing some real concern in our neighboring communities. With regard to Whittier, we had a meeting with the superintendent this morning. I'll talk more about that when we get to that agenda later, but in terms of when we can expect to actually get their proposed operating budget for next year, it's not going to be until March. So that's going to continue to be unknown for at least the next 4 weeks. And typically, just to be clear, we never have a real number, but we're typically given like a budget number that we then refine as we go forward. But sitting here today, I don't have anything from Whittier, so that's a big variable. Let's see. The public works, I think it's going to come together really nicely, but where we did have to restructure, and we do have different kind of staffing structure, and you know, with the highway and the facilities and kind of the administrative side of that, those are, you know, we're working with those departments to make sure that we've got everything accounted for. And we also had a fairly, I think, good news, something I had hoped to get done, and we got the blessing of the Park and Rec Commission at their meeting about, what was that, about 10 days ago. I had suggested moving the routine Park and Rec kind of baseline service expenses, things like porta potties, fertilizer, their water bills, you know, just paying the town's water department their routine usage bills, to get those into the public works facilities budget rather than Park and Rec, just logistically and policy wise, it makes sense. The commission was amenable to that, so that's, I think that's a real good thing. But that'll mean moving that, so you'll see a jump in public works that'll be offset by a reduction in Park and Rec. But those are all things that kind of take time to put together and make sure the presentation, when it gets to the public and when it gets to the board and FinCom, is made clearly. So there are some moving parts there. And the last kind of moving part that's outside of my office is veteran services. We have a new veteran services officer. He's terrific. But, you know, this is the first time working with a new, not just a new director there, but he's got a new support person who's different than, so basically all the staff we've been working with all these years is different. So we're working to get a estimated number. The ethics doesn't vote the assessment until, you know, significantly later in the process. Last year's vote was in mid-March. So we wouldn't have a confirmed number, but typically we can rely on getting a budget number. And some of the ones that are in my realm, that are still, you know, I'm still working on the health insurance. We have a good model. We've updated that with our head count, and, you know, who's on what kind of plans. But just as is the case every year, we don't get our actual FY25 rates until my board votes them, which is mid-February. They've given us you know, a range of potential increase in terms of rates. So I've kind of plugged in an assumed amount, but that's something that's going to be until we get to the actual rates. The good news is we have a model with the head count accurate, so we can just adjust that one cell and it runs through. But you know, we've talked a little bit about, you know, with the council, looking at the legal expenses, making sure that we're budgeting properly for that going forward. I think we've done a nice job with that the last couple of years, but obviously some number of legal expenses are you know, can't be anticipated, and we've definitely seen that this year with a couple of months of billings that were kind of above what we would have hoped to see. But so that's kind of where we are, and so next Monday, you know, I'll be presenting my budget, and then I'll work with Rob as FinCom chair to kind of stagger the budget reviews as we have done in the past, in a way that kind of front loads those that are ready for prime time and puts those that are still gonna be in flux for some time, whether that's schools or health insurance or veterans or some of these others, a little later in the process to allow the information, the information gets better with the passage of time, so.
So the first joint meeting is the 15th.
That's right.
That's the first budget discussion.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and, I will put up, I know you have it in your packet, but, I'll just pull up that updated calendar. It's in tonight's packet. Because I did go ahead and put in all the dates that had been, agreed to for the joint meetings and. Here. Yeah, so you can, this is a great, thing to just kind of have right at hand. We do this every year, and this is a good kind of way to keep track of the process as it goes forward.
Can I maybe throw one date in, at least conversationally, right? On the 13th, Pentucket's doing their budget,
Yeah,
so I just don't want to be aware of that.
okay, yeah, I'm surprised I don't have that.
So that's a conflict with our joint.
Oh, what? I didn't update, I had put it in for the 27th based on, well, okay, they voted on the 27th, but yeah, they have a hearing on the 13th, so yeah, I can.
That's the one they sent out, so
It's
you
6
can rush
o'clock. Yeah, so should we, is Rebecca RSVPing for all of us, or should we contact Marianne directly?
Either way, I mean, I asked, I think I asked FinCom if they RSVP to Mary and Napa to also let us know, just so we're aware of who's gonna be there. So I would ask you to do the same, but you can either let me or Rebecca or Jim know, and we'll let them know, but if you let them know directly, let us know too, so we know who's gonna be there, and we know.
Are you going?
Yeah, that's how I took his email and I responded to both the.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, Chris was very, right on, yeah. But, you're probably aware the Pentucket, or not Pentucket, Whittier is also having
I know,
a meeting next Tuesday.
but that's during
So-
the day, right?
I'm
Did
sorry.
you find out the time, Angus?
It's during the day, I thought.
I didn't, I wrote to them today and,
It's unknown, they have
2:30 a.m.
2:30 AM, and we're not disclosing the location.
And you'll be
But
fingerprinted.
it is posted,
All right, that's enough. Is it? Okay, so potentially there's a conflict there or no?
well, so I had suggested, if we want to have representation at both, we might wanna be intentional about,
Yes.
maybe having different members attend different meetings and,
Okay,
I suggested for FinCom, for instance, as an example, I might go to Whittier and the other three might go to Pentucket, because Pentucket is actually more immediate. I mean, it's numbers that is gonna be coming right down the pike.
yeah,
The Whittier thing, we know, is probably not immediate.
okay. All right.
You're on the 13th.
I mean, I know we have Whittier on later. I'll just say one thing now because it is relevant to budgeting. We're not gonna have a number for a while, but the superintendent did strongly suggest today, that she doesn't expect the FY 25 budget to include major capital projects. Obviously, it's not totally up to her and the school committee and so forth, so but, there is some work they're gonna need to see done, but it doesn't look like they're gonna be proposing like wastewater treatment plant or sprinklering the whole building or those kinds of things. In fact, there was I don't wanna get ahead of, it sounds like there was potentially a good, potential breakthrough on the wastewater side where, there looks to be viability of tying into the Merrimack.
You don't say.
So it turns out
Oh,
that,
Their capacity.
so it turns out Merrimack, and this is all verbal as of this, what I heard this morning, so I just want to be clear, this is not like, this is hearsay, but what was, my understanding of what was said this morning is that Merrimack's now under some kind of consent decree from EPA and needs to expand the size of their treatment facility. and therefore would have the capacity. So Carol McLeod was at the meeting, she said, you know, they gotta work with EPA, so nothing's set, but it looks like they are gonna be looking very seriously at the option and the potential mutual best interest, including of the town of Merrimack, to actually run the septic or the sewer to Merrimack system. So that's certainly not etched in stone, but it was an insight that came out of today's meeting.
That might make the numbers better for Merrimack, just in terms of revenue.
Right,
Oh, yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, you would think that would be.
So we're assuming, of course, that we've never heard of Merrimack being a culprit in the CSO issue, but I'm assuming that they have a clean system, that they have separate sewer.
I don't know if they have CSO locations or not, but that would be knowable.
It's probably not right.
So, yeah, a couple of other just brief observations from the superintendent's remarks this morning were, she does expect their proposed budget is going to carry a new full-time electrician position because the electrical is such a concern. I guess the day after the election, all the lights were out in all the hallways, and they had to leave the doors to the classrooms open so that kids could see. So, you know, the electrical system is kind of an acute concern. So she did kind of caution there would be probably a new position proposed. But with regard to capital projects, what they talked about, and I don't have anything in writing, but something along the lines of trying to engage someone to help them really prioritize like what needs to happen, what can wait, and to really try to be over the course of the next, and she didn't name a period of time, so I won't, but to really get to where there's a clear path to move forward, with the presumption they'll be in the existing building for, you know, the foreseeable future. But we can talk about non-budgetary with your stuff when it comes
Okay.
up, but on the
Alright.
budget side, that's what I have.
All right, thanks.
All right.
On to item B.
All right, next item, this is kind of interesting, it's been brewing actually for about nine years. Michelle's done a lot of work in the last 2.5 years or so, to kind of help crystallize the issues. So I just wanted to make you aware, it's not been up until now, I haven't really viewed this as a select board issue, it's more of a Concom issue as the holder of the CR and as the holder of the trail easement, as well as potentially a planning board issue, since if there was to be a change in the location of the trail easement, that would require some action from planning board to update the plans of reference for the Ocean Meadow site, where as of the last couple of weeks, I did see that this did now become more of a select board thing, at least at the minimum for you to be made aware of, but I would also welcome if you have any kind of initial response or guidance. Hopefully these exhibits kind of, you know, came through clearly in terms of the potential scenarios of either of one way or the other, you know, potentially relocating the easement, where that falls into your lap is kind of what is going to be preferred as the safe crossing for Route 113. So I did put this up on the screen because it's a little bit different than what you have in your packet, this that I have up here. What you had in the packet showed sidewalk or conceptual sidewalk on the south side of the road with a crossing outway to the river. Because of the crest of the road right here, that crossing outway to the river really would not be the safe place to cross. It would be further up as shown here. And we also Michelle got some feedback at last night's Concom meeting from the equestrian community that a sidewalk on this side would allow more, there's more breathing room on that side of the road if horses have to get, or pedestrians have to get kind of further away from the travel lane. So I'm not looking for a decision. I'm really just wanted to present this so you're aware this conversation is going on. I think
So that view right there, where's the, so there's a rise in the road?
Yeah, it's right around, kind of right around here.
Trying to picture.
You're kind of coming up and you don't actually see way to the river intersection until you're kind of, it's not a big crest, but it's enough that it definitely is. A distance issue. And, when I put this together initially, I was just doing it based on like, straight lines and not really considering topography. So we have, I have shared these materials with our traffic consultant, TEC, and I've asked them to add this general vicinity as like a focus area for their, for the conceptual planning. So I also wanted to make you aware that I had done that, since that's kind of a roadway project.
So,
Okay.
I just, this is a really basic question. Why can the Laura property owners not be forced to put remove the gate from the deeded easement?
I'm not sure, but that easement is not something the town has an interest in.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
What do you say, Dale?
Has that,
the easement on the Lord property is held by ACTA.
Okay,
So,
but why would, so you have not an interest, but you've got a concern with it, because if the town has now got to work to relocate all this, can't you get, it's obviously used for the path.
Mhm.
For what, walkers and horses or something to such effect?
yeah,
It should be enforced, you can't
yeah. it's
shut
just-
off an easement, we're going down the wrong path by looking to relocate something, we already have an easement, it should be,
but we don't have any, Vector does.
well, make a request to Vector that they enforce it.
Yeah, they've been fighting this for 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, and I went to court.
Yeah, they may have a reason too, Chris, in that, ECTA is frequently trying to get new easements in places, and I think they try to stay, low pressure. So I don't know that's
Well,
the
it
issue
it
here.
went to
but-
litigation, I mean, it's been a pretty,
Oh,
process.
that one, okay.
Yeah, well, the one on the Keller property.
Yeah,
the litigation,
I
the court
heard that one,
affirmed
but it was one
that
of
the easement exists. I do think there's a question as to, does the town, if the town, even though the town's easement is gonna end, either its property line or basically on the Ocean Meadow property. Certainly as a former town planner, I mean, I'm concerned about if we're channeling people to a crossing of a state highway without providing for safe crossing. I think we ought to be looking at improving safe crossing either way, whether it's in this location or that location. So that's, I assume the board agrees with
Yeah,
that.
it makes sense.
So do you feel like this is a safer crossing, a second alternative?
I mean, this is just me working
I know,
on it,
you
so
have options.
it's really for the traffic engineers to look at like, what's the better location of the crossing? From a land planning standpoint, I think like, why would you have an easement on someone's driveway?
Why would you have an easement going next to somebody's house if you had an alternative?
Yeah, and it's like, and it's a constraint,
So it's just really
Right.
odd.
yeah.
I mean, I guess the Ocean Meadow easement too is also near the houses, but it's different, I mean, it really cuts into the space that is frequently used on a Kelly property.
Right, as opposed to the back of the
Right,
houses.
exactly.
Right,
By
right.
the way, Angus, when they consider this and stuff, do you then get into sidewalks and things?
Well, they hadn't been, I'm the one who.
No, I know,
brought that
but
to
would
them.
you imagine that a sidewalk becomes part of the discussion, or something like this?
Well, it has, so I've been part of a couple of meetings with the Ocean Meadow Homeowners Association. Michelle and I have had a couple of conversations with them, there have been conversations with ACTA. Michelle's had this before her commission a couple of times, the Ocean Meadow Homeowners Association definitely, has just in the last week or two expressed, their feeling that they're open to a potential relocation, certainly without having committed to that, but they're open to looking at that. But wherever the easement ends up, whether it ends up being the existing one or some relocated easement, they would like to see, improved safe crossing with some kind of, blinker, and crosswalk.
And perhaps a sidewalk.
well, depending on where yeah, you can't put a crosswalk on a state road without it going somewhere. You can't have a sidewalk to nowhere. The state wouldn't allow that, so,
So is that what they would gain from this concession? State crossing of 115?
well, I don't know if they're not looking, you're saying Ocean Meadow?
Yeah, for them to agree to create a new easement basically through a
Mhm.
large part of their property, there's gonna be something in it for them.
Well, I think they're understanding that in the best of circumstances, could take a couple of years to
Yeah.
effectuate that, and I think they're probably not in a huge hurry for anything to happen,
Yeah, okay.
so it's something to keep our eyes on. It's not something that, I've, kind of been drawn into a bit primarily in terms of supporting Michelle and what has at times been a kind of a tense conversation with a lot of different parties. I think that what came out of last night's Concom meeting, or the way it was paraphrased to me, is that trying to get both the property owners, Ocean Meadow, ECTA, and the town all in one space to try to see if we can't figure out something. If ideally is agreeable to all parties, but at least is the best outcome, all things considered, so.
And I just have to say, Michelle's made more progress in the last 6 to 9 months than, 9 years that this has been going on.
That's
So
right.
she's really done a great job.
I couldn't agree more, but I would say that, and you know this, Wendy, better than anybody, it's taken an enormous amount of time, all of which is time that, either stretches her or compromises other things. And it hasn't, she does a great job with a lot of things, but it's happened because she's put an enormous amount of time.
Yeah.
And part of, as you know, with this trail, planning checklist that was a major effort this fall, it's exactly to avoid these kinds of things where after the thing's built, for literally almost a decade later, we're still trying to pick up the pieces and make it right, make it make sense instead of, having, and I don't want to impugn anyone who was involved when this was done. I wasn't here. I have no insight on that, but these are the kinds of things that ideally you want to think through and have a sound, thoughtful plan kind of upfront rather than after the fact trying to solve a problem. So it's on tonight's agenda, not for any action, but just it had risen to the point at this point where, it's definitely important for the board to be aware of what's going on.
Did you have other questions, Chris?
No, I just don't understand how the one owner can cause all the extra work and angst it's just,
It's both owners and ECTA, I think. Or,
well, it's not both owners. Kelly, you said it was confirmed in court already.
but that's after a lot of.
I was gonna say,
Yeah, it doesn't mean he's happy about it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a unique situation, I'll have to say.
Same.
All right.
Next item, Ash Street Management Plan, this is the same one you saw. There were a couple of tweaks coming out of last week's meeting, so I just wanted you to have the actual plan as submitted in front of you. And I also wanted it in here so that residents, we know this, at least last summer, this was a great interest issue. A lot of people focused on it. So I wanted to make sure the plan as submitted was somewhere on the town website, and it is. It's part of tonight's posted packet. So
Mhm.
if people want, or if you get questions about it, you can point them to the packet where. And obviously, once we get a response from Natural Heritage, we'll let you know and close the loop on that one. Next item is also just kind of a FYI, you had voted to approve ARPA funds toward this project, as well as the Pentucket surplus borrowing proceeds from the middle high school. So we have at long last signed a contract, so that work is now under contract.
do you know where, I saw, there was an account number for every part of it, and then I recall, there were just a couple lines for the finances, showing where the funds are coming from.
Yep.
There wasn't reference to utility incentives. And
Right.
do you know where they are baked in there? So
They are, but my understanding is, aren't those paid to are those paid to the?
yeah, they'll be paid directly. Well, we would have to assign them, I think, to pay them directly to the vendor, but that's typically what's done.
Yeah.
But because I hadn't seen them as a line item, I wanted to make sure that.
It's not an expense line. We're not we're not,
No, but there was an account number reference for payment. I thought there was, again.
I just looked, I didn't see.
Yeah, I thought there was,
Are you thinking of, it was further in the packet,
but.
the HVAC? This is the senior center work.
No, this is the
All right.
page for HVAC. I just want to make sure that we have applied for and will be
Yeah.
receiving utility incentives.
yeah,
And I think I had mentioned that, because of attending the, National Grid Energy Summit down in Worcester last June, I guess it was, that there was I think it's a 20% bonus that we get. I can forward, I might have already forwarded that letter, but if not, I'll try to remember to do it tonight or tomorrow, just to make sure you have it, but, there is a bonus that we get with the incentive because. So it's not huge, but it's, I think, another $4.
but that's part of the B2Q contract.
Yeah, this is a reference, yeah, so, okay, so that's, these are the source of funds, so there's the PRC, this is the second one, I couldn't remember, the PRC. So, this references this account.
221003.
Yeah, so
Seven.
apparently $115,000 will be coming out of.
That's the ARPA,
That's our-
yeah.
Oh, that's hard, okay,
Yeah.
but, so.
But the contracted amount, I believe, was net of the incentives.
Oh, it was.
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah, I
Okay.
believe so. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, we probably just want to verify that.
Yeah.
And I'll let you know, whatever,
Yeah.
which can go to.
Well, I mean, when I say I'm pretty sure, it's not that I don't know, it's I don't know at this moment off the top of my head.
Yeah.
It's not that it's, but, yeah, we'll look at it.
197 is the total. So,
But I know, for instance, like with the Council on Aging, HVAC, it was just in the last 2 weeks that I signed the paperwork to go to National Grid to get the incentives for that, and that was kind of at the tail end of the project, and that was another B2Q project, so I think it's gonna be the same thing, they do the work, they do the paperwork, they submit it to us, and once we're satisfied that the work's been completed, satisfactorily, I would sign the paperwork that then gets sent to National Grid. Well, I think they get the incentive. I think that was netted out of the contract.
Okay, well,
I'm curious, Rick, I made my notes on that meeting, because once it was open, it was a very messy meeting.
It was, yeah.
And actually, I think that's the only minute meetings we haven't gotten back, Jim, isn't it, from that meeting date? Remember we mentioned it a while ago? I think it's in there, because I had to clarify those to Max, and that it just was cumbersome to.
so this is interesting, the two line items that are mentioned here total 196,000, but the contract amount is 189.
That's because when you voted the ARPA amount, it was up to
Oh, it was the
115.
higher amount.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna need all of that, but that amount is appropriated.
Yeah.
That's good. Is this the entirety of the contract? There's no mention of warranty, I guess?
No, probably not. I don't, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it is. I might have thinned out some of the appendices just because it's a 200-page packet. So I sometimes do that just because it's informational. It's not to give you, I mean, if you want the whole file.
No, just making sure we talked about warranty, obviously the original system
Yeah.
had issues, want to make sure. The other thing, scheduling on this is gonna be during the winter break
no,
Yeah, it's been pushed back.
to the spring break.
Yeah. Yeah, because there was side correspondence with, potential for a different vendor who could potentially do it at a lower cost, so we held off on signing the contract to make sure there wasn't a way to do it with our normal advanced energy. And then eventually I think it was about sometime in the last 2 weeks, they said they weren't interested and then we told the contract. But we're trying to save money, so if you don't want me to save money.
I guess the schedule is.
All right.
No, I didn't mean it as a negative. When we talked with the gentleman, he talked about doing it in February break.
Right,
And there was no mention of schedule in the contract, and that's
Right.
all I asked.
yep. But the delay was because we were trying to save money,
Right, no, I get that.
so.
Yeah.
Next thing, this came up fairly recently. Brian brought this to me and it's odd because this, the state, inspects this, every year. And it's supposed to kind of clean bill of health, and now all of a sudden,
Is
there's
it a
something to
new
do with the
inspector?
amount of square footage that's visible. So with the removal of, an interior non-load bearing wall, it brings the site into compliance, so I've given him the okay to go ahead and do that. So I just want to make you aware of that.
Why are we doing a leasehold improvement? Shouldn't have done it?
No, that's not the way. I mean, we own a building.
Lease it to them.
Yeah, I don't believe that repairs are in the
It's not
lease
repair,
agreement.
it's an improvement.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, it seems very strange to me.
Yeah,
Just trying to share information. I mean, we do work, let's share information. It's, if you want to do it done differently, I mean, let's have a hearing about it, honestly.
so, I mean, we do have the lease agreement. Would you like to see the lease agreement? Chris, are you interested?
Well, we just renewed it too.
Yeah, I honestly don't remember what the terms of the agreement are.
We're just trying to solve a problem. Problem comes up, we're trying to solve a problem, that's it.
But I mean, it's still okay to ask questions. I mean,
It
not-
is, it's just,
Yeah. So if you want more information, let me know, and I'll see if I can hunt it up. I know it's in the packet, or you probably have it in your paper files, right? All right, next item.
got a lot of good information at the conference, so I just sent that around.
So that was a separate attachment, right? The
Mhm.
slides from that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. It was a really worthwhile conference. Some of them, there's not a lot, it seems like, that, was beneficial. So I'm glad you were able to go to that.
Were there any, specific takeaways that are worth?
Yeah, I mean, one of the ones that definitely made an impression on me was the solid waste. It definitely, it seems like by bidding, there's, it's a different market, Western Mass, different place. It seems like they had 5 or 6 interested prospective vendors. I don't think we have that number of prospective vendors in this area, but that's something that's come up, a number of times in the last few years as to should Board of Health put it out to bid, should they not? FinCom has taken a strong position they should, Board of Health hasn't. The takeaway from the conference was you can not only contain costs, but potentially save money. That incentivizes vendors to sharpen their pencils. And so our current contract for Holland goes through FY26, so it's going to be a couple of years before it comes up. But the advice from the conference was to start, a good 10 months, if not more, ahead of time. But one of the main points was there has to be a willingness to change vendors, otherwise you're wasting your time. So I just wanted to make, that certainly stood out to me as something the solid waste it's one of our largest single line items in the whole budget. So it does seem it's kind of incumbent on the town to do what it can to contain costs in that area. So I think that's a good thing to talk about with the Board of Health, when the time comes.
There must be other vendors that provide that service, just not as many as in Western Mass.
All I know about it is anecdotal, what I've been told by
Yeah.
the Board of Health.
Yeah.
So I haven't, independently looked into that.
Mhm.
But what we're told is no one else wants to bid on it, but.
And yet every town has someone working a contract.
Yeah, I don't think we know until you test the market.
Yeah. I mean, it's not all the same person clearly there's people out there.
Right. Hmm. And you say there's potentially changes in procurement that are,
Yeah, as part of the bill that the governor filed was to increase the threshold for required RFP from 50,000 to 100,000. So it's part of a large bill, and I have no idea whether it's going to pass or not, but it certainly would make a big difference to us. We spend a lot of time on procurement, and so that would be a plus.
Okay, we'll move on to item D, department updates, or did you have other things?
Nope.
that aren't on
No, that's all. That's it.
there? So Merrimack Valley Vision Zero meeting.
Christine Wallace has been representing us on this with involvement also from, Chief Dwyer and Butch. It's, as you'll recall, it's a regional grant MVPC got, and we had agreed some time ago to participate with them in the grant. So I haven't been directly involved there. I am planning to be part of, we have a meeting coming up on February 14th. But I did, when I got this, I had sent it around via email, and there is an interactive, website where you can actually zoom in and see the hot spots in terms of where crashes are, and it's very interesting. So if you haven't looked around at that, you know, I think you'll find it interesting, but it also, at least to me, kind of illustrated, you know, what we've been saying for some time, which is that for West Newbury to compete effectively for state and federal transportation dollars, which are all, you know, allocated on a regional basis, it's going to be very difficult. We don't have hotspots in terms of, you know, traffic safety relative to the region. So that was, I mean, if you look at the regional map, and it's no surprise, I mean,
Yeah.
but it just kind of, it makes a pretty stark impression as to, if you were the regional planning agency or the state allocating funds, you know, where would you prioritize your dollars? Like, but, you know, I don't mean in any way to undercut what we're doing with the corridor study, because I think that's really important over the long run. It will put us in a position to compete for those monies. It's just that we always need to be realistic about relative need and, you know, I think when we get a project that's to the level of readiness, you know, one thing we will have going for us is that we never get any money through that, and that does count for something.
Yeah.
They do want the money to be allocated through the region, but proportionally, we'll get, you know, a share relative to, you know, the more urbanized areas that have probably 50 problems for every one we have.
That's the good
Right, good and bad.
for us.
Yeah.
We only have one for everything.
Right.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So, yeah, it's really more just so you're aware that this is going on. Next thing, I just included the agenda from last week's kind of land management planning huddle. We do these typically every 2 weeks, sometimes it's every 2 to 3 weeks, depending on scheduling, but you know, I thought it was a good illustration of some of the work that's going on kind of on a collaborative basis among a lot of different departments. You know, we cover a lot of ground in those meetings. Last week's we only had an hour because we had, a lot of us had another meeting at 10 o'clock. So we kind of go through rapid fire, touching a lot of things, and it continues to be extremely productive, both in sharing information and keeping the different departments aligned on what's going on, but also we make real substantive progress on a lot of these issues. It's just very helpful having all the perspectives there. So I just want to keep the board aware that those meetings continue and they're part of how we advance work between the board meetings.
So I deal with Newbury town staff at my job, and they were talking about how isolated they are. They don't know what other departments are doing. So I shared this, you know, approach, and they were really intrigued by it. So I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, it's kind of you know, somewhere between doing nothing and doing a lot of department head meetings.
Yeah.
It's, you know,
It's
this
like a
idea of these
working
kind of working groups is more like to be very respectful of people's time and how busy everyone is. And to have kind of departments with natural alignment and is not in any way exclusionary. I mean, if there's other departments who want to sit in, that's great too. But this is one that has really gained traction, largely because there's someone in charge of it, which is you know, Christine. So she kind of sets the agenda. She invites anyone to like add something to the agenda. It's not obviously a formal agenda with minutes and all of that. It's not that. It's more just to make sure that we touch on, some of the front burner issues.
No, it's great, though. I mean, I think it's phenomenal. There has to be synergies that
Oh, yeah.
come up where you didn't know that that person was, or that department was doing that. And look at how what I'm doing, or what my department nests together with it. I mean, there have to be things like that that come up all the time.
Yeah, all of these agenda items have multiple departments
Yeah.
working on, so,
Right.
yeah.
And then the town planner report, that's continues to be a really huge value add that our still somewhat new town planner is brought to the table. And I really commended her on this work that both advances her department's and her board's interest in getting the word out, but also has been part of this overall synergy of just helping everyone know more about the big picture of what's going on. So we actually met earlier this week, with her and the chair as part of the performance evaluation process. And I told her if there's more we can do, if she wants us like sending these out every month as a news and announcement, similar to the historic minutes,
Mhm.
we're happy to do that. There's just a lot of good value in these updates.
Yeah, I thought her follow-up on the Lauren property and whether it complies with MBTA is really good, and that's outlined in here. That might be worth putting on. You know. Spoiler, it doesn't. All right, so we on to board and commission and committees. Anything else on town updates? I mean, department updates?
No, not for me.
Anything from you, Jim?
No.
Okay. All right, item A is update regarding the working group for the regional agreement. What do you have for us?
We met last week. The whole committee was there. Angus couldn't make it. He did that, and it was fine. It was actually a great meeting because Angus had done the blended document, so we all had that to work with, it's colored, and I never anticipated we could get through it, but we did. And I think the only issue that there was not going to be agreement on, and I basically said, we'll concede, was the wording about the requirement to have an elementary school in each town. Both other towns want that to remain. So that's not a battle I was gonna sweat at this point. The other issues are much more significant. Roland wanted to add stabilization into the four components of the budget, so that would be, capital, operating debt, and stabilization. Everybody was in agreement on how that should work and flow. The regional committee to get reestablished and all that. So we got through the whole meeting. There's the intention that Kathy Castellanos is gonna get us the revised document. Rob and I sort of left the meeting with a little different impressions. My understanding was they were gonna try and get it, if the time frame allowed, done for this town meeting cycle. And there was a discussion that it's never gonna happen, let's take the right time and get it right. So I think based on the fact we don't have the revised document for this meeting tonight, it would be unwise to try and get it complete in the next few weeks, because it's gotta go to so many levels. And it's gotta go to each select board, it's gotta go to the DESE, it's gotta go to the business manager, and then get ready, probably legal.
And legal.
So but it was a very good meeting, because I think that everybody had a general agreement and consensus on it.
Mhm.
It's just how to get that moved forward as efficiently and effectively as possible.
So, I don't know if you saw, I put, one article request form in.
Just as a whole,
placeholder. Yeah,
Angus had sent me an email saying, what's the status?
yeah, yeah.
Basically gave an update like that it would be,
Okay.
put the hold, but I wouldn't put a lot of work.
So, I mean, my only fear is that if we don't push forward with it, then all this progress is gonna, tank, and then we'll have different select boards next budget.
Well, I think the legitimate progress on it still to get it fully defined and through all the appropriate, could take 2 or 3 months.
Mhm.
So, and then we hope we'll come to select board, we're all gonna vote it to be done, and then it's ready for, if it could be fall, that's when it happens, if you wanna push it to
I
spring.
think it can only happen in the annual meeting, so that
I don't know, that's why,
For some reason, I thought it said that the revisions.
So I think the convention is not to do stuff outside of spring when you have the greatest attention. I don't know I don't know if there's a prohibition, but I think there's been a practice of not presenting to fall something that might be of import to more
Okay,
people.
no, I
I thought there
understand.
was something in the agreement.
I think there may be something in the.
We'll find that out, obviously.
We'll find it.
We're already a year off cycle.
Right,
Yes.
right, yeah, well, so, yeah, so it already said.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe if you don't make the Springtown meeting in the designated year, then anything.
And I can't imagine the other two towns are currently entertaining it at a select board level, because there's no document to address at this point.
Plus, we did agree to pass it by the business manager because there's stuff in there that goes directly to her duties and we need comment back. And then we agreed that the superintendent's council needs to review. Because it really shouldn't go to a warrant until the town council has blessed it, because, you know, us rewriting it isn't the same as a lawyer crafting it. So that needs to be done. And then like DESE has to bless it. This is all before it goes to the school committee for their viewpoint. So I'm really convinced that what I heard was, we've agreed that we did a great job. It will continue. That's not gonna end. But it's unlikely that it'll be presented this spring.
Okay. So, on the elementary schools, what was the objection of both of them? Can you summarize that?
Not really, they both pretty much came out of the gate and said it's non-negotiable.
Yeah,
So,
they've never explained it. I think so Carol, for instance, said the use of the word may instead of shall. They thought that perhaps this is opening the door to us not having an obligation for some portion of our elementary school students. That's not the intent at all. No.
Yeah.
So like Chris says, it's like they're adamant about it. They're representing their select boards who are adamant about it. It's not like we can't revisit it, but one part of this new agreement has the advisory committee every 5 years reviewing the agreement, or it can be taken up at any time. So if an opportunity presented itself that there should be some level of regionalization for elementary schools, you know, you could make a 5th and 6th grade combo school for Groveland and West Newbury, then you would probably revisit that idea. But they've never articulated anything that would satisfy you as to why they're saying no. It's just, they have it in their heads that there's something that could happen that is not understood at this time that would be bad. So they're not gonna go.
they couldn't understand why we wanted it. But they said
I
because,
actually, do you recall how that came up?
How about, you know,
There was law.
yeah,
Was it?
yeah, we're, so going back to the original agreement, we don't have a regional elementary school system. The idea that Walt floated was merely, wouldn't you want to be able to do that if it turned out to be the thing you wanted to do? The answer clearly should be yes,
Yeah,
of course.
yeah,
They take exception to may versus shall. They wanted it to be an absolute requirement that everybody would have an elementary school. But the discussions never went any further.
They don't like options.
I think they're very comfortable with the way it is. Merrimack, don't forget, already has 2 elementary schools.
Right.
So,
Yeah, so they're,
and it was not
But
negotiable
again-
with Groveland right out of the gate, so to try and overcome both of those, I just thought it was better
yeah,
to look at the issues you can solve currently.
Yeah,
right. And you always get another bite of the apple. I mean, if this works really well, then people will maybe be a little more comfortable with, you know, mucking about on some of the other stuff, you know.
So how would this be perceived if you, as you say, you know, gave in on that and it comes back to this board and the board does not agree with that?
You let it at the time.
Yeah,
Matt, I don't know what else you do. I think it would have made for a very difficult night if you
you just.
held your feet to the fire on the first, it was going nowhere, sure, so it would have been a fool's game to sit there
yeah, no.
and push for that one, so I would rather get something rather than nothing.
Well, Chris, when you say the meeting was 180 degrees from the prior meeting?
Yeah, it was, it made some sense.
All right, well, that in itself is encouraging.
Yeah, no, if you were there, Chris and I came away pleased with the meeting, very pleased.
You know, they don't see an imminent need to not have an elementary school, so therefore you all have to have one.
Okay. Well, it seems more important to get the other stuff cleaned up than.
That's sort of what I felt, so
Yeah.
hopefully if it comes to this point, you'll both do.
No guarantees, Bill.
No guarantees.
Okay. Update regarding the municipal energy aggregation. You had that call.
Yeah, we had a call with Colonial Energy and, you know, we were one of, what, 4 towns? And it was with, a senior counsel from DOER.
Right, yeah.
Do you wanna just kind of, it was just a 30-minute kind of, check-in. And I took a bunch of notes, but I couldn't.
Yeah, just a general printed updated on the fact that there appears to be signs of progress in moving some number of communities who have already, you know, entered community municipal aggregation applications. And it looks like they will probably take them in groups. Nothing is sure at this point,
Mhm.
but, you know, there appears to be progress where, you know, otherwise we were looking at 2 years or possibly longer.
Yeah.
And it appears that there's progress where it might actually happen sometime in the next several months. Or at least this calendar year. Nothing definitive, I mean, that's pretty vague, but there wasn't any content that you can really nail down.
But it's a
there-
possibility at least.
Yeah,
She was
yeah.
saying 2 or 3 years.
Right,
Yeah.
right, yeah, but, he was just conveying that it looks like there's going to be progress and, the TPU, you know, has, I think, been mandated to get its act together. So, I don't know, was there anything, I didn't take notes and I
Yeah,
did listen.
now that was the takeaway, is
Yeah.
progress is being made.
Yeah.
Yeah, but very hopeful that, you know, people were hearing things that I guess over the years they haven't heard,
Mhm.
or listening, I should say.
Yeah.
Instead.
Yeah, I mean, the people in Colonial seemed, they were all smiles, and that they, you know, they seemed that they were taking this as being pretty positive.
So they've been on the front lines for.
Yeah.
Okay, good. The next item is the Green Communities Grant report. Did you want to say anything?
Yeah, well, that was, the deadline was Friday, we filed it on Friday.
Mhm.
I had originally expected to file it earlier, and then, you know, life happens and there are other things to do. Technically, we had to file it within 2 months of completion, and back when we did our final training on December 5th, well, I said, well, I guess completion is, the completion is okay, you know, because it's due by February 2nd, so.
Mhm.
But, you know, the overall, the project went well. I think we'll see what the results are. You know, I expect we'll meet the targets for, energy conservation that were projected. That'll be the proof will be in what we have for results here.
And so, is there any response to this report? I don't recall what. happened.
Not yet,
But what we can expect.
yeah, but the response is generally just an acceptance, or if there are questions, then they'll come and ask the questions. Our regional, coordinator from, Green Communities may or may not decide that it's necessary to make a visit here. If there are questions about the system, then he'll probably want to come visit
Mhm.
and see what's here. And it really, we have somebody new anyway, so it would not be a bad idea for a visit anyway, but you know, from past experience, these are not, high stress, visits or.
Sure, it's not like a motion inspection.
Yeah, right, exactly, yeah. They just want to be confident that what was supposed to be put in, it's actually put in, and that is in fact the case, and now, you know, we'll hopefully reap the benefits that we expected.
It seems to be working well. There's comments from Brian in there about how.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's pretty pleased with it.
Yeah.
And
Good.
he just likes the fact that he didn't realize before, because Wayne was really taking charge of things before, he didn't realize that he had control, the amount of control that he had, and that he can even do it remotely, so.
Any questions from you, Chris? Okay, oh, so the next item is to just review where we're at with the questionnaires. I did not send one to the Board of Fire Engineers. I know you've been going to that. Are they scheduling meetings?
Actually, I've been to, I was at a meeting last
Just
week,
had
and, yeah. Oh,
Is there another one on?
I can't recall when the next one is gonna be. There actually may be one in another 3 or 4 weeks. I was at a meeting last week, and then the one prior to that was maybe 3 weeks before.
All right, well, I mean, I think it's worth having them fill it out.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'll still
yeah,
send it to
Yeah,
them.
okay. Oh, I guess I shirked my responsibility there. I should have handled that.
No, I sent them all out. That was just one that we meeting regularly, so I didn't know whether we wanted to include them.
Okay, yeah, there was one on January 10th and then on February 1st.
Okay,
And yeah, so for whatever it's worth, well, you'll see in the capital requests that, you know, they're looking to replace the tanker truck. And, yeah, that's a pretty big number, but it's been something that's been on the capital improvement plan for a number of years. At one point, there were 2 years or something, and then they decided that one, but 2 was not necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they thought it through pretty thoroughly.
okay. Capital Improvements Committee, I mean, I sent this back in August, but obviously it's not been meeting, so what do you think is the best way to?
I think it's on. Well, we have a meeting on Thursday night.
Right, so I mean, I presume will be a new chair, but I don't know if there's any like upcoming items, if one of you could just mention that.
Sure.
Okay.
And I can resend it to whoever the new chair is.
Okay.
For a future meeting. Did we do the climate change resiliency committee? Elisa, like, as soon as I sent her that questionnaire, the next day she sent it back to me filled out, but I think we might have skipped them. Do you remember? I know the Energy and Sustainability Committee.
I assumed that we did, but maybe not.
You don't have a record of that, do you, Jim? I can go back to them.
I have a running list, but I can't access that server on this.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
I hate to ask Elisa and admit that I don't remember, but I guess I'm gonna have to.
Yeah.
If you find it, you
Yeah,
can let me
I
know,
mean, that's
okay, all right. Cultural Council, they are now formed, right?
Yeah.
Do you think they've been meeting enough to have any sense of what their mission? Okay. And was there a chair elected, do you happen to know?
Yes, Brian. Yes, awesome.
Did you send me his contact information? Great. Historic District Commission, I know we did the Historical Commission, did we do the Historic District?
I don't need to do that.
And that's Jill Hudson as the chair?
Yep.
Okay, I'll follow up with her.
And they've actually, they meet pretty regularly, in
Yeah.
the sense of how often will they actually meet with her.
Right. Okay. River Access Committee, I did not send one to, I mean, they're.
They've met,
Yeah.
over 2 years, I think.
I think that since, Rob's term there ended.
Yeah, so we'll just kind of hold on that for now.
I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. And then the last one I had was the Whittier School Committee. I mean, that's kind of, it's not like we appoint the whole committee, but it just made me think of, we might want to touch base with Chip at some point, just to kind of say what we want from his participation on that. I'm gonna give any thoughts on that, Chris.
I think it's a good idea. Obviously, I
Yeah.
just went through, I think, not just Chip, I would hope all the video school committee members would start getting back to their towns a little more effectively, so.
Yeah, Chip acknowledged that
Yeah.
pretty clearly.
Yep, but I mean, are we looking for a monthly update or copy of the minutes, or, you know, I don't know what would be most helpful. If they meet monthly, I mean, some kind of update monthly, I think would be helpful, but.
I would say they meet relatively, at least every month.
Yeah. Yeah, I did ask the superintendent and, you know, I suggested that if, when they post their school committee agendas, if they would send them to the 11 cities and town clerks, and we would then post, that would go a long way to improving visibility of what they're doing. I know Jim had asked a couple of times previously and not really gotten anywhere with that, but I'm hoping maybe coming out of this morning's meeting, maybe they begin to do that.
Mhm.
That was the context with, people from 9 communities there,
That's right.
yeah. Okay.
And was that taken seriously by the superintendent?
I haven't gotten a response yet from the email.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so then that just leaves all the boards, the elected boards, I mean, do
What about Harbor? I don't think we should.
I invited them, oh, and then we had a date for the meeting, but they didn't show up, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do they get a pass?
No, you'll see what
It's
happens.
very
to
timely. I have a meeting next week with the Salisbury town manager regarding the public master contract, so it's
Is that up?
it's up at the end of the fiscal year.
Is it 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, I can't remember,
Yeah,
but
I told you I was looking at other
Yes.
harbor regulations and I
yeah,
pulled theirs and I think they're pretty good, and that would make sense if we use something similar for the divisions and. Okay, on the elected boards, are you both going to your appointed, I know you've been to a couple board of health meetings,
yeah, I've been, not to everyone.
Yeah, but just, I think occasionally.
Most of them are work issues. Yeah.
Okay, and I know you've been to some of the committee board.
I get this sign up tomorrow. to be
Yeah,
honest.
yeah. So I'm
I
gonna
see
check-
Brian out walking, I said, anything you need, he says, no.
Okay, well, all right, great. So, we'll follow up on those couple outliers and see if we can wrap this up. All right, we're on to action items.
okay,
Okay.
so we have.
So before we start on the review of the warrant articles, I have a proposal to make. Even though I don't know for sure if I'll be on the select board next time around, but how about making the deadline at least a week before the warrant closes? I mean, it's crazy that we have multiple things coming in today, multiple versions of the packet.
Yeah,
Does
it
that make
is,
sense
it
to you?
is, it's, the issue, recall when McCarron was counsel, he would say, the warrant doesn't close until the warrant closes.
Mhm.
Now, as we've talked about, the only entities that have an absolute right to put something on the warrant are the select board, the planning board, and the citizen petition. So you could say you will not entertain requests, unless they receive a certain amount, but I would caution that all of the requests that I've initiated, I wrote in the last 3 days.
Mhm.
That's not because I procrastinate, that's because we've been really, really busy and
Yeah.
haven't had time. So
But I think a lot of them, nothing.
they were things you knew were coming.
But they could
but
have
to
been done
get-
a month ago. I mean, even the ones that I worked on, if I have if the deadline is February 6th, it's just human nature to wait. till
I
last
don't know
minute.
about that. I mean, mine couldn't have, because a month ago I
I'm not,
was
yeah, I'm not
like-
talking about yours, but like the water
around the
one.
clock and other stuff. So
Yeah.
it's just, there's not. So I guess that would be my only caution. So if you said as a matter of policy, and of course it's not binding on future boards, but if you said you wouldn't, like, let's say with the fall town meeting, let's say you send out that you're gonna close the warrant the Tuesday after Labor Day, or maybe the Monday before, the last Monday of August, but you're not gonna entertain something that isn't received a week ahead, but then something comes in that's 5 days ahead that's meritorious. Are you really gonna say, no? Maybe you will, but in turn, this is a small town, I think.
Yeah, but couldn't you just say, the warrant closes on X day, warrant articles are due, whatever. I mean, that's not saying it won't be entertained, but at least it gives people a benchmark instead of shooting for the closing
Yeah.
date, they're shooting for the due date.
Yeah,
I don't know, I just feel like it's just too much on your office. I mean, how many requests did you handle in the last 2 days? 10 at least, right?
well, yeah, I mean, I probably wrote almost 20 of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, as we've talked about up until a year ago, at this stage in the process, the board would have a 2-page memo with bullet points.
Mhm.
And you would close the warrant, and the bullet points that survived would then justify the work to put together the backup. as of a year ago, we front loaded that to create a huge amount of work on the front end, some of which might not be in the warrant, all of which has diverted time away from what's in the budget.
Mhm.
So, you know,
So,
I haven't been home in like 19 days, like at all. So that's the consequence of the change that this board made
mhm.
a year ago.
Is there something in the middle where you just fill out the front, the cover sheet and don't have to do all the legwork? I mean, we're looking for placeholders, right? Unless, no.
Right, I mean, some of the things on here are so well known to you
Mhm.
that I think, it's almost like who's gonna read these forms? I mean, I think FinCom will, but before things would get to FinCom, they, you know, you'd bulk them up, but, it's, I don't think there have been, you know, a lot of, like the ones that didn't have article requests, a lot of those that were capital articles, we had capital sheets. So the article request is just a cut and paste, like it's just make work. So that's something that maybe wasn't, you know, clear, you know, this kind of absolute expectation of an article request. I think it's more like, is there sufficient information for you to know enough about what is intended to know if you wanna have a warrant article? And if there's a capital sheet that's got all the information, to me, it's kind of like silly to have an article request form that's got the same information that's on the capital sheet. But that's what we did. So, I mean, there were a handful of those from DPW. I'm not gonna, they did an awesome job. They came through with like, you know, 9 or 10 articles that I got on Friday in time. Well, I had to let them know yesterday morning, or Rebecca did, that, hey, these 5 or 6, like, we have capital sheets, but we didn't actually get articles. Like, I hate that because I think it's disrespectful of how busy people are. It's like make work. To say nothing of the time, you know, that I've had to spend creating article requests. Like a year ago, it would have been fine to have a memo with bullet points. So it's up to you what you want, but, you know, there weren't, other than, I mean, there were some like some of our own on the bylaw requests that as I was putting this together over the weekend, I'm like, you know, we talked about those things. We definitely, it was clear, like on the dog leashes, there was clear an intent to do something, but I didn't have anything on file. You know, obviously the FinCom bylaw, FinCom's been saying for a while they wanted to do something, but it wasn't until this afternoon that we actually received
Yeah,
it.
so I mean, those are the ones that if we had a different deadline, you know, I don't know, I just feel like it might help your office and manage office.
I guess my point is those weren't a big deal, like.
No, but it's just messy, so.
Yeah, it is, it's messy and it makes it tough for you, because I try to get you everything
Right,
that's
so-
ahead, and then it's like the day before, here's round 2, here's round, you know, it's.
Yeah. All right, well, I don't want to distract from, you know, the real business, but I
What
think
about
it's.
a rolling process, like you said, the dog leashes, if we'd, after that meeting, if something had been put together, just put out, so that
Yeah.
you're not jammed all now. Same
Yeah.
with the water department, I knew they'd been looking for money for a pump,
Mhm.
right? They could
Because we had the
have gone in and done that then. To wait till the last week or 2 weeks is gonna kill you every time, so. Any of these departments, if they have a heads up on this coming, just fill it out and put it in the file in his office and wait.
Well, but even that though, if you look at the backup from the water pumps that's in the updated packet, which you probably haven't, because it just went out yesterday with a bunch of other stuff. It's actually got different numbers than the ARPA request that was filed, you know, 6 or 8 weeks ago. So what I put in to the packet over the weekend was the ARPA request, because that's what I had on file, and I knew, yeah, I had it on my list, and I didn't want it to be overlooked, so I put that in.
Mhm.
Then Monday morning, you know, Rebecca went to talk to, you know, Water and said, hey, we need an article request. Well, the number had changed. It went from 19 to 44 because they've added a bunch of other, you know, lines and.
Yeah,
And different things.
it's not just the water pump. it's
Right,
the whole
so that's an
system.
example where, you know, they didn't have, you know, the number they had 6 or 8 weeks ago wasn't the right number. And even like the plow truck, which is a, you know, obviously a very big ticket item. You know, they put in a nice proposal, like, you know, with a specific quote, but I met with Bush today. He said he's he's looking at a different model and he might be able to bring it in for less. I said, less is always good.
Mhm.
But, you know, it's a dynamic process. It's not like people know the information and they're choosing not to do it. It often takes right up until the deadline to kind of put something together. So
Okay.
it's difficult
I just-
every year.
I know,
It's
it's
different.
trying to make things, work more smoothly, so I think it's worth talking about it, but
Mhm.
there's no magic solution, I'm sure.
I do think, it would be helpful to my office certainly to clarify, like, is this request form an absolute requirement? So for instance, when I was meeting with Sue and Brian yesterday afternoon, we finished the eval, we started talking about other stuff, we talked about MBTA communities, and Brian raised the prospect of, he said, well, if we get a bunch of substantive, comments back from DHC or EOLC, whatever, the existing housing level communities, and they're very different, he said, we might pull this back. And, I said, okay, that's great, thanks for letting me know, and I'll let the board know. But that could come off the warrant for the spring, we're not gonna know for another few weeks, but as we talked it through, I said, well, geez, I know the consultant's already kind of getting squeezed. If this thing goes on for another 6 months or even maybe another 12 months, like, they're gonna turn into a pumpkin, they will have satisfied their contract, we won't have them, so I just threw this together very quickly, like, we might, maybe it goes on another 6 to 12 months, we don't have a consultant, that's fine, but we should choose that rather than potentially that happens and we say, oh geez, we'd love to keep them on or engage someone else or even have some money to throw at MVPC to help us. If we don't have a placeholder on there, we've missed the boat on that. So I put it on there. I didn't write an article request today because didn't have time.
Mhm.
Are you gonna put it on? I guess we'll find out. But that's where, like, I wrote a lot of article requests that I would question how valuable was that when I could have been working on the operating.
All right, well, let's revisit this the next time, like well ahead of this and try to.
And obviously, having 65 potential, and it's actually 2 of them came off, so
Oh,
I
that's,
left them on here because I didn't want to screw up the numbering.
so which ones came off?
So I did confirm with town council just late last
Oh,
night
okay,
that number 20, there is no need for town meeting vote on that. And then Jim had confirmed that it's number 55 on the police detail reserve fund. That does not need a town meeting vote.
All right.
So
Which number was that?
55. So, and on the paper handout you have, I marked it and striped through so you can see,
Okay,
And Angus, I think we've discussed it before, but if you could keep, like you just said, once the number is assigned, keep that number throughout the process, and then when we get to really doing the warrant, then we can reassign the warrant number.
So the way we've talked it over, and how we intend to do it is once the board sets the warrant, we're gonna rejigger these because there were some things that I tacked on at the end because they came in at the end. But I wanna have this like, as close to like the order that we expect to take up. So for instance, the FinCom bylaw, if that stays on, I'm gonna wanna put that back tucked in with the other bylaws rather than some like, at that point, I'm happy to keep the numbers consistent until the warrant's actually set.
Right,
But these numbers are like less than meaningless. So these will change again in the next week.
right, right.
Once they change again, I'm totally. on
Exactly,
board
then we
with keeping them.
stick with them until
Yeah,
we get to.
right.
This is the real
Because
one.
up until, through Sunday night, like, I think it was a pretty logical flow and it made sense, but then now you see, 5 or 6 kind of attacks on it again that are kind of, don't fit where they are, so.
Not to mention all of the capital, like expanded the entire middle of this section.
Yeah, and that's a conversation, I think we'll have tonight is most of these are clearly capital, but there are a handful that are they or aren't they?
Mhm.
Let's figure that out tonight so that if they are, that they get sent to capital committee time.
So on the ones that are called off as capital, there's also another document that follows behind that, that is the capital form.
Well, no, it's the article form. Okay. Yeah, there is a so-called Form B It's
That's what I-
substantively identical to the
Okay.
article request form, so it says Form B at the top, but it's otherwise
It's the
completely.
same.
What happened is, I think it's more the other way around, that the capital form over the years has kind of morphed into an article request form, but I think the genesis of that, I don't know that, but I suspect the genesis of the article request form was the Form B.
Mhm.
Um,
Okay. So, I mean, all we're doing tonight is just saying whether these would be on the warrant. So
That's right.
I would ask, is there anything on this list that you believe should not be on the warrant? Or if you need to ask Angus questions in order to be able to make that determination, that's fine too. Chris, did you have anything that you thought should not be on the warrant?
No, I
Okay.
think in general it's fair to entertain most of the issues.
Okay.
There are a couple of items I put question marks as the sponsor, specifically the bylaw ones, just because I didn't know. Like so I'd like to, if those are gonna stay on, I'd like to put in
Are
select
you
board
looking
as
at the-
sponsor.
Question on the capital, the red question mark?
No, we come back to those, but no.
50, item
Yeah.
50.
Yeah,
I think those are the select board.
I just didn't, I thought so, I just didn't want to be presumptuous, and I put in for a lot of these that I expect before it's all said and done, the select board will sponsor. I put them as myself, just because we haven't talked, like the, drawing from school stabilization. We always do it, I assume you do it, but I didn't want to be presumptuous, so a lot of these where it says town manager, the minute you say, yeah, we want to do that, I'm gonna switch that, so it says select board as the sponsor, I was just
Okay.
being conservative. there.
Okay.
So
So I think
on the
the,
bylaws, I assume if you put them all on, those are all gonna be select board sponsored.
yeah, I think I put your name on it just as.
Right,
The liaison for the select board.
Yeah, so I'm, number 52, the animal bylaw. So there's 65 articles shown here currently, and I could see that one lasting a long time. And I don't want to kick a can down the road, but, with 65 other articles, or 64.
Same with the hunting one, I would do them together, if those want to wait till the fall, I don't think that would bother me,
Well, I mean, but how long it's gonna take a town meeting, I don't believe should be a criteria for whether we keep it on the warrant. I mean, is that? I mean, these are things that we've identified that are concerns of residents. I'm not sure we should just eliminate it because it might take too long. And there might not be 62 articles when all said and done. I mean, that's my opinion. And isn't that what we have a moderator for?
But if people continue to have you,
If we're gonna keep any of those, I would keep the animal bylaw, because that's something that comes up again and again. The animal control officer has asked for a strengthened, questions. We've had bite incidents, I mean, it's something that really needs to be resolved, I
yeah,
think,
I understand that completely,
yeah.
but, if we, again, 65 articles, I don't know, if we have a 4-hour town meeting, what does that?
we can always cut these later, right? This is,
Oh,
you
yeah.
can say,
Yeah.
this is the max.
absolutely,
Like we move forward, we say, so maybe that's the conversation for
That's
that.
right. yeah.
They set the cap and then you can.
Yeah, and then I would, as I said earlier with the operating budget, I would work with Rob as the FinCom chair to sequence their review so that we're not wasting their time on something that's
That might
like
cut.
may or may not. We're front loading them with the ones that are ready for prime time, and then as we get into the, meetings later in the cycle, that gives a little more time for the details to be worked out, some of these.
And do you know if it's the FinCom's intention to evaluate like the animal bylaw that doesn't have any financial repercussions probably, but,
But our obligation is to make recommendation for all warrant articles.
okay,
Correct.
But, what that means, I mean,
okay, yeah,
some things will be easier than others,
yeah,
right?
all right. So are you both willing to just leave what's on there for now
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and read them out as we discuss?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay,
I just wanted to point out that.
Yeah.
That sound.
and also the wetland bylaw. It's gonna take a lot of conversation.
Exactly. Now, I guess if I'm not gonna be one who's advocating moving that. Not holding it.
Yeah.
What's the quorum requirement for spring?
It's 90 for articles above a certain. It's 40 for the annual town meeting, and it's 90 for a special town, 40. And it's 90 for a special town meeting if we're
If they're
above
more than
20,000.
To ask it another way, if we go to a second night, if the quorum's only gonna be 40.
As long as it's not money.
Yeah, right, so to Rick's point, we have in the past gone to 2 nights. Quorum of 40 ain't that hard to, it's particularly if they're gonna interest people, so.
Yeah.
So perhaps the bylaws would be at the end.
Yeah, perhaps,
Yeah.
you know.
So I did meet with Casey a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't know how many it would be, but it was already clear it was gonna be a lot of articles and
Yeah.
some high profile ones. And we did definitely talk about the, likelihood that it would go multiple nights.
Mhm.
She said, and certainly this has been my experience in other towns, that's very routine. Most towns, in fact, I've never heard of a town that wrapped it all up in one night. And she said in her moderator friends, like, that's very routine. She's very comfortable with that. It's something we all need to know and message it properly and so forth, but we shouldn't be, in my opinion and hers, that's not something we should be worried about. It's trying to keep it to one night. Like if it
Okay.
takes 2 nights or 3 nights or in Westford, Marshfield, 4 nights was not unusual.
Really?
I mean, these are towns of 24,000 people with an open town meeting, so, yeah.
So
you know,
you were incorrect. Just creating quorum for special town meeting, that do not exceed $20,000 is 40.
Yeah, and
All articles for appropriations exceeding $20,000. And the annual town meeting is 90.
Right, that's what I was
So
thinking.
annual town meeting is.
Is 90, is 90, yeah.
So Jim had put together this up on the screen, it's not a great font, but this actually shows the kind of historical
Oh,
trends.
look at the high school one.
Yeah.
890.
Yeah, so this is, and we can email this around, this is more just like a curiosity, but the other point this brings is we definitely think we ought to be looking at an alternate venue, because the one we had, 280 in the annex is really beyond
Yeah.
what we ought to
Our
be.
fire chief is staying in the back room.
Yeah,
So we ought to be thinking about either Page Elementary School or Pentucket and trying to pin down an alternate location.
so would there be room in there, maybe in the gym?
I don't know, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think we've ever had one.
but I don't know, like, do they have enough chairs? I don't
Yeah,
know.
they do have an AV system and stuff like that, so it shouldn't be a problem.
But we should look at an alternate
Yeah.
location.
I don't presume that Page would have anything that evening.
Yeah, we'll look into it.
Okay.
But I think that, it seems like the annex probably isn't gonna be,
Mhm.
a great
Yeah.
place just based on size.
At the last meeting, the last 2 or 3 meetings, with a lot of contentious issues, they went really quick. There was
I know,
no-
it was really shocking.
But I'm gonna warn you, and I don't like to speculate, but Facebook has had a thread going on about people, it's a whole different issue. Now have equestrian properties, and they think they're being egregiously taxed, they're claiming they've gone up 35%. And there's like 180 comments on this thread. So you have a former selectman who is no longer in town, is telling everybody, go to town meeting and vote down your budget, because if you don't have to pay for things, then your taxes go down. So there is this whole undercurrent that is getting pushed, and just be aware of it. And it's very distasteful. So if you get a half dozen people and their names are out there, I've checked their properties, and I don't know the validity of how their taxes have gone up. But they feel very aggrieved, and they could stir up town meeting in a very dysfunctional fashion, they could start questioning every dollar, well, if I don't spend that here, then my taxes will go down, so. That's
So
what-
maybe some public education on why those tax rates went up is in order.
Yeah, and there was quite a lot of, I know the Board of Assessors and the Chief Assessor, they had a lot of documentation on that, and that was definitely something that you know, I think it was, I can't recall exactly, it was definitely brought to my attention
Mhm.
proactively ahead of time. I think it was part of the tax classification hearing, I'm not certain.
Yeah, it was part of his presentation.
Yeah. That doesn't take the sting out at
No,
all,
no.
and it doesn't mean that that got out to the affected property owners. But definitely it was a, you know, it was, it was, yeah.
So it might be worth a report from the Board of Assessors
Yeah.
at the beginning to kind of preempt.
Related to that.
Yeah.
But also the initial thing that you raised, I mean, my quick calculation is that taxes for the median household should have gone up about 5%. And the way you come up with 5% is the school was up 8%, and they're half the budget, and the rest of the town government was that therefore about, you know, 2%.
Mhm.
So, and you add those two up, divide by 2, because each is half, then you're about at 5%. Given that it was directed specifically to the schools and was supported in all 3 communities, even though 2 had to do an override, people need to be reminded of that. Now, that doesn't go to whether certain classes of property have a different thing going on, but it is important to note the context of what we've done. To that end, when we published the FinCom booklet this year, what I intend to do is work with Angus so we can show some graphs and charts of, you know, how the taxes have actually been going, how the amount that we have to raise, which is what goes to the tax bills, how that's been going. And I think if people look at that, there's nothing untoward that's gone on. Now, that doesn't speak to individual assessment, it's a whole nother matter. But I think the town-wide, the people have to know where increases come from. And quite honestly, when you set your operating budget ceiling last year, Angus, you were below that.
Well, but we were lucky because we were having no debt service,
Mhm.
and we had a huge reduction in our retirement assessment.
Yeah.
Which we knew was a,
I'm gonna say-
A one, but
but
the-
now we're
Yeah.
paying, because the.
yeah, so
Yeah.
we're gonna roll into a new year, there'll be
Yeah.
new discussions, but the context, Chris is pointing out what the context could be. And part of the context is people knowing that, in fact, the spending has been under control.
Mhm.
In fact, on the town side, it's basically, it's gotta have been about 2%. Yes, it'll go up this year, but that's what we gotta explain to people how it goes.
One other factor though, Rob, in terms of the actual tax bill is the whole free cash transfer and the decision not to do that.
Mhm.
That definitely translates to a $200,000 tax increase.
Yeah, so instead of 5% increase, it would have been 3% increase.
So you may know, and I want to make sure it wasn't overlooked because you may or may not agree with me to put it on. I did go ahead and put a placeholder on here for a free cash transfer for the tax rate for FY 25 on this spring town meeting. As you know, that's always been considered a fall town meeting, if at all. So, you know, I think it's worth having the conversation in parallel with the budget and, you know, whether that ends up being a metric based on free cash and stabilization, or whether it ends up being a metric based on the prior year's turnbacks, or whether it's a metric based on maybe there's some things in the the budget that end up being, you know, endorsed, but that the, you know, board feels would be appropriate to phase in, you know, like the impact or something. But one way or the other, you know, I think having a placeholder on there, you might take it off before you sign it and post the warrant, but I think it's good to preserve that option.
Right, and the conversation should be as we go into this round, because it does go, free cash goes many different places, and, you know, if it goes into stabilization, it's also accomplishing the same thing.
That's it, yeah. that's right.
So there's, it's part of this, we all know, we've had
Yeah.
this discussion a lot of times. I think it's good to be taking it up right now, because I think, that we're gonna be under some pressure this year, as opposed to, like Angus just said,
Mhm.
you know, he says, you know, we were a sweet spot last year. I still think he's gotta take the compliment that the departmental budgets will really well work. And that
I work hard at it, but I just, you know, Anyway, I
He's not
appreciate
gonna take it.
it.
He's not gonna take it. So,
appreciate
no, that's okay, forget it, I'm not gonna
There's
try,
not a-
I'm not gonna try.
We're on a very short list of towns in the Commonwealth that have no debt.
Yeah.
So let's just be frank to the voters, like that's.
That's a
not
part of
always
it,
gonna
that's
be
a
that.
part of it. Yeah, okay,
Anyway,
fine.
it's-
I also wanna compliment the department heads, and maybe they'll take the compliment, I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you, at this morning's Whittier meeting, there was a jovial and lighthearted, but also pointed comment by one of my counterparts in Ipswich about, how basically, well, we all have issues with the levy capacity except for one. And I turned, I said, thank Tracy for that, because Tracy was sitting right across the table, but that goes back to things that she did in the early 2000s, so it's, yeah.
So we're the only ones who are fine.
I didn't say we're fine, but yeah.
No, I-
That was really clear from those presentations.
Yeah, we have a lot more headroom in our levy
Yeah,
capacity,
we do.
and that is, yeah, so.
And granted, it would wipe out our levy.
Right.
Yeah, right, well, yeah, and plus, you can't just say we got a lot of levy capacity, because what people react to is year over year increases in taxes. So that's the thing to keep in mind, and if there's a year over year like last year, where it was higher than it probably had been in a couple of years, people have to be reminded, it was for the schools, by design, by agreement by all communities, including two that had to go override.
Mhm.
Can't let that, that speaks really well of the three communities, quite honestly.
So we need to vote.
Yeah, just two loose ends, very quick ones, but FinCom bylaw, I'm gonna go ahead and put select board on there as
Oh, I
sponsor.
think it should be the FinCom
Should be
that
the
brings it
Or
forward.
FinCom, okay, all
I
right,
think the FinCom should bring it forward.
okay, all right,
Any
Also, if
opposed?
you would, since you're doing that on item 62, that's actually Board of Water Commission. That's what,
oh, good, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
Board
exactly
of
what I
Water.
do, yeah, good. And
40-year-old item will replace.
good, and then, for 63, I will, when it's time, we put together a brief write-up on that, but,
So that wouldn't be the planning board?
it could be if I wanna, I mean,
Yeah.
it would take me longer to delegate it than just, I mean, I already, in the email I wrote you guys last night,
Mhm.
I just copy and paste that into a form. But it's just, it takes me time to chase people for forms, like I'd rather just write the form.
Yeah, so any on the first page that are unassigned?
Well, the instructions rules, I put question mark, because obviously that.
Yeah, how are we gonna handle that?
At some point, you'll decide if you wanna do it, and if you do, but. I mean, that's gonna appear on every warrant,
Mhm.
so. To me, I think you could just say like not, because anyone could make a motion, this board could make a motion. FinCom could make a motion, Rob as an individual voter could make a motion, it's on the floor. So that's one where it's automatically gonna be on the warrant, because it's in the 1936 Act. If there's a motion on the floor, it's kind of like, we shouldn't pretend that, like, it doesn't matter what we put here.
Yeah.
If someone makes a motion, that's in order, and the moderator will entertain it.
But if we as a board wanna provide instructions, we have to.
Yes.
Discuss that in a meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll just have to keep that in mind for the next series. Okay, so we need to vote.
Yep, and then the only other thing, which is really the next item, is the handful of things I flagged as are they capital or are they not, so we can take that up.
All right, so we'll do a motion
I'm
to,
making a motion that we, approve the list of articles as presented and discussed.
close the warrant.
And close them.
All right,
Okay.
all right. All those in favor? Aye.
All right, thank you.
All right. So on the capital items, it seemed like there was a handful that were coming from free cash that should be capital, but are not part of the plan, the CIP.
Well, no, I mean, it really depends how you read it.
I was just reading the article request form. It
Yeah.
Stated that in the bottom of whether it applies to capital.
Yes, yeah, they do apply, so each of these four do apply to either, assets or facilities, so, well, Coffin Street, I went ahead and created a capital sheet.
Mhm.
But that's engineering.
So the request at this time is engineering.
Mhm.
I put it on the capital program because the goal of that is partly long range forecasting, and I want everyone to know that there's likely to be a future request for construction. The question is whether the engineering, I mean, it depends how you read the bylaw. Is it a capital item, is it not? And so if you want it referred to capital, let me know and I'll retool this and mark it as a capital item, but I think if we do that, I think at some point we have to get to some clarity about like there's capital and there's capital, like.
Yeah, right, there's things that you can see, touch and feel, and then there's work you have people do ahead of the time where you actually produce something.
That's right.
And
we-
we have tangible and non-tangible.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
we do, with the current staffing in the last several years, we're doing a lot more studies, a lot more engineering, a lot more architectural, a lot more surveys, a lot more appraisals. Than
I've never,
more happened in the last 5 years so my only concern is, if we're not really clear about what's a capital article, what's not, I don't want there to be ambiguity as to the ability of, department heads or boards to initiate, work and soft costs and studies. Now, I understand it's not a capital item per se until it's over 20,000, so like an appraisal is not gonna hit that threshold, but something like this where we could be spending tens of thousands of dollars on engineering, or the next one for the Page School standpipe. Those are more than 20, they relate to a capital asset. If we want capital committee to weigh in on, let's refer them. We already have 19 articles without those. Part of my critique, and we'll talk about this Thursday with the committee, Rick knows this really well, and I think you share my critique. The way they do it, I don't think is really particularly helpful. The litmus test, I think, is pretty dated. And I think that the report they generate, which is a listing 1 to 6 or 1 to 8, or maybe 1 to 23, in my opinion, is both unhelpful in terms of giving the reader any kind of qualitative information as to whether it's a priority or not. But it's actually, I think, actively unhelpful to those projects that are in the bottom tier. When to me, everything on here is of value, or it wouldn't be on here. So I think it's more, my concern is as much to do with how they have operated over the years. Because I could just envision, both from a bandwidth standpoint, if they're presented with 23 articles or 19, every hour I spend supporting CIC is an hour I don't have to do your work, do Rob's work, do my day job.
Yeah,
That's a concern, when we're dealing with this volume.
so is there anything lost by having soft cost, not capital, if what they lead to is a capital project?
I mean, I guess theoretically, if those things are like invisible to the capital committee, then they're gonna be like, well, wait, what the heck? We didn't know you were, working toward designing culvert replacements, and you might be asking for stabilization in a year or two. We didn't know about that.
but that can trigger that conversation.
Exactly,
So
yeah,
you
like
can,
it's all out in the open, it's
Right.
all shared.
Mhm.
It's just a matter of, are they being asked to
yeah,
weigh in on it or not? That's,
Can it be an FYI or?
yeah,
to me, it could.
yeah.
I.
Well,
It
yeah,
should be
because
in
to
a-
some extent, you don't know if you're gonna have a capital
Right, exactly.
expense until you've gone through that.
The other thing is, you guys have vetted these things, it's not going to warrant unless you're trying to accomplish it. You're the people that are making this decision about this aspect of it. To Angus's point, I believe it should serve as a trigger, and it might actually start precipitating some more work ahead of time. I'll give you an example. Mark, the other day, Board of Water Commissioners shows me the request for the system upgrade of the water pump, et cetera, down on Wellfield #1. And then explains how they've been putting it off every year.
which led to the question of, well, couldn't we have originated this request back in like, oh, I don't know, October or September? I think having the trigger is good. It might precipitate the CIC to start slotting stuff out, asking those questions. I don't believe that you need to have them review the design and all that stuff that you guys have already put all your energy and effort into. If it's not passing muster review, it's not going anyplace. Why have a second person look at that? But to Angus's point, there has to be more triggers where we start taking up this stuff, other than, you know, the last week in January, the first week in February. And I think they could, you know, every board can stand a resetting of how they're gonna approach what they approach. So I see the spreadsheet that you maintain, Angus, the CIC spreadsheet, that should be a view to the future.
Mhm.
And it should be the concrete stuff that you would expect them to look at. But I'm not quite sure how proactive the town has been really getting to that in a way. You know, in other words, that's the reason for the trigger. I mean, knowing exactly what it's gonna be in Coffin Street should end up therefore being reviewed as soon as we get the report back. That's what I'm
Well,
getting.
it gets a little, but it is reviewed by the department heads.
No, but I mean,
I guess one thing that gets a little muddy, there's a great example, I'll pull up the backup for this, for the, standpipe at Page School. This is a great example of where it's kind of muddy. Because right now, this is the elevator, but this makes the same point, so I'll just show this. So this is the sheet from the capital program on the Page elevator. And this anticipates that some future date, there's gonna be a major expense. This 600, it's like complete guesstimate, it's probably more like $1 million or more. But the request that's before the voters this spring, or before you to bring to the, you know, warrant, is 65,000, which is a figure that Jonathan Seymour's still working on. It could change, but he's saying we're gonna need to spend some money to have like an engineer to really look at it. So I put this in both, like it's on the capital program, Page School elevator. I put in 65,000 design only. Like, that's a little messy, because I guess, I mean, would I have like a separate project for, I don't know, we've done that on a couple of things, and I think it's the best we can do to kind of show there's gonna be some costs incurred in year one, other costs in year 2 or 3 or 4. But you gotta spend those year one costs to even know what the project is.
yes, exactly.
But there's other things that are a little messy in the capital program to do with like where the funding's coming from. So for instance, the HVAC, the Page School HVAC, I carried in the capital program and it's still in there. But I zeroed it out because it's not being funded by stabilization. Like it's messy. I think once we finish once we start the conversion to ClearGov on the capital plan, which we haven't, we're focused on the operating budget. I think it's really gonna help because it's a platform that's specifically designed to do that, as opposed to this kind of monstrous Excel workbook, which is how towns do it, but it's not, it's like everything is manual. Everything you see here is manual. So I think some of this will shake out when we get into ClearGov, and because that's gonna, I think, allow us to say, here's the big nut. Here's the 10% that you're gonna need to spend to know what your costs are. But right now, we're still in this kind of in-between stage where everything you see is in Excel. So the time it takes to like keep all this stuff internally consistent is a huge amount of time.
But Angus, can you see the 65 not going to CIC? That's my question.
Well, that's really my question.
Yeah, right, and
So it doesn't even need to be on there. I mean, you still have the 600,000 for FY 26. Do you need the 65?
It's, these are the things I struggle with, because I'm
Yeah.
trying to be transparent,
Sure.
but
But you can have a policy that says that we're gonna maintain it just like you mean it, because I feel you wanna have total project costs.
yeah,
You do wanna actually see where the nut is really gonna be spent, but that doesn't mean that you have to have a second set of eyes on what others have already done
just because it flows into a capital project, the capital project, past the 65, you may want a different process for, but for services that are part of the actual project, I think you maintain it the way you're doing it, but it doesn't go to CIC. I don't know why it would.
Yeah, I don't think, I mean, it seems to me it's not tangible that, I mean, you don't, until you apply the file and apply that money, you have no idea what the capital need really is, so I just don't. see
Yeah,
it.
and even if it goes to a bylaw, we get to change bylaws from time to time. We don't have to leave them since 1930.
Right, and that's part of where this will, hopefully this cycle be shaken out. And I spent a fair amount of time talking with Jenny, with Jim, with Rebecca, and also with others, Butch and Mark and Wire, because they're all like looking to me for guidance, and I'm like, I don't think it's a great use of anybody's time to be having, because every dollar we spend is going through this board and FinCom and department heads, who, by the way, are really professional. So like, at what point are we spending how much time
Redoing their work.
which is really distracting from the work we have to do?
And oh, by the way,
Also-
in my mind, the capital improvement committee, and I don't want to shock and alarm anybody, but a lot of town government came about when you
Had no town manager.
you had no town manager, and you had to pull people in to help out with stuff. The capital improvement process is part of the accounting process. It's part of finance. And so you guys and Angus look at that on a weekly basis. And then it will end up going to the finance committee. And we like to look at it as often as you like to look at it, which is probably not as much as we have to look at it, meaning all of us. But the point is sometimes you gotta just reassess where the biggest bang for your buck is. That's all.
Yeah, I a couple of thoughts. First off, I wonder about our thresholds. What made me think about it was the town moderator bylaw. I looked at it. So it was written in, I think the original was 1977, there was a number assigned, $20,000 being the threshold for the quorum. So, geez, hasn't there been inflation since then? So I did a quick online lookup, and the fact that going from 1977 to 2023, not 2024, but 2023, if the aggregate,
Yeah,
so
20,000 becomes.
it is over a multiplier in excess of 5. So in theory, what is $20,000 now is $100,000, greater than $100,000 now. Same thing applies to the capital, to the CIC threshold. I mean, these numbers no longer make sense in the context of when they were first introduced.
That was
So,
1977.
1970, that's, if we look at the bylaw of that,
Oh, yeah.
of what was in the packet. So
Boy, that's pretty shocking.
right, so, those numbers just don't make sense anymore. And I don't know what does make sense, all I do know is that they don't.
Yeah.
And what makes sense is having, what do you call your new system?
ClearGov.
ClearGov. So now you have the capability to do it where it belongs, on a desktop, in an office, by a full-time employee.
And once we get this into there, I know you keep hearing how great this thing's gonna be. It's really gonna be great. It's gonna be great, but not just because it's gonna, I think, present things a lot clearer, because as much as we put thousands of hours into this and it's pretty darn good compared to how other towns do it. It's still very wonky, it's very, but the biggest thing is very cumbersome, and like I said, it's very manual. Getting in a ClearGov is gonna make it a lot more efficient. I made the decision probably 6 or 8 weeks ago that it was gonna be all I could do to get up to speed on the operating budget side of ClearGov. I would have loved to get this in there, but it's kind of like I could see starting at spending 30 hours and realizing that it's gonna be another 70 hours and then I've wasted 30 hours that I didn't have to waste. So I kind of decided I'm just not gonna really start migrating all this to the ClearGov capital module until I have a little time.
Yeah.
I'm eager to do that because I actually think it's gonna be great, but we decided we have to kind of, you know,
Just stay with what we
can't
have.
In the meantime,
change the horse midstream, as they
Yeah.
say.
in the
So
meantime, services is not capital.
that's my feeling. I mean, I think a good outcome would be to do 4 things. Yeah, say these are significant expenditures on projects that very well could come before you in the future for, you know, recommendations on funding. You know, I mean, you can,
I would send it
But
as an FY,
yeah,
it's not a request to make a decision.
yeah, but I mean, you know, you can see the same way, you know, the same reason I flagged the concern on the bylaw. A literal reading of it could suggest, I won't say does suggest, it could suggest that, a dollar can't be spent until they review it. And that's what I'm trying to, you know, just clarify any ambiguity, because, that's never how it's been read. That's never, no one even had thought about this until I proactively brought it up, trying to solve a problem.
Mhm.
And it turned into, well, wait, what are you up to? And I'm just trying to say, well, we don't do this. I don't think the town's ever done. I don't think you've
No,
ever
no,
gone to
no.
CIC for advice on doing a property appraisal.
So
Like,
how do we manage it for this cycle then, given that it seems?
The way you've always
Yeah.
been.
Well,
I think sharing is an FYI. The thing is, once, you know, you close the warrant, so once we retool this, which isn't gonna take long because you haven't made much change, we're gonna repost the complete packet, and it's all, you know, as you know, from the website, it's all hyperlinked. It couldn't be more transparent.
mhm.
So, you know, actually, this is the wrong one, but, yeah. So we'll be able to tell the CIC and every other resident in town, hey, if you wanna learn more about this one, you know, click there, and there it is. There's nothing hidden. There's nothing anyone's trying to get by anyone. It's just trying to manage, the bureaucracy.
What I mean, Wendy, is services have never gone to them. It hasn't. In my knowledge, it's never gone to them.
Well,
Services.
and that's kind of was my thought.
But then down to what, CIC?
Yeah,
Well, there's been a debate sometimes, in systems.
Yeah, yeah, and so to me, it's like if the money's coming out of stabilization, that's a higher bar
Mhm.
and warrants that extra layer of review, but if it's coming out of free cash, there's so many checks in the system. So, you know, I hope this cycle we can get the bylaw tweaked. I'm not looking to make it the perfect capital bylaw. That's probably beyond what we can do this cycle, but I think just as a housekeeping thing, I've practiced for a long, long time and has not been a problem.
Well, what about using the stabilization as a bar? You know?
Well, that's what I suggested in the amendments.
I know,
Yeah,
okay,
I like that.
all right, well, do you think
I
that,
know there was some resistance, that was 3 years ago.
yeah, okay.
I think that's reasonable.
So if this does come up, can you bring it up at the beginning of the meeting instead of 10 o'clock or 11?
Yeah, I mean, I think Wendy, you and I corresponded a little bit about my recommendation would be prior to referring it, I mean, and it's about what people can look, but prior to actually referring it for the CIC to weigh in on, I'd love for this board at the next meeting, even next week, it wouldn't take much prep because it's already written. Just to say is, because what I wrote, the minutes from 3 years ago were accurate. I wrote it 10 minutes, like it was just a quick, like, trying to get something on paper to start a conversation. I'm not saying it's perfect. Before it gets into the mill with everyone chewing on it, I'd like this board to really look at it closely and say, is this what you want to get behind?
Mhm.
Because you might say it's fine as is, you might tweak it a bit, but before, you know, I don't want to be like defending something until I know it's what this board is supporting.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to be on an island with this one.
Sure, and then what about the amount? Do you
I think that's a great observation.
We'll have to come up with a number. I mean, do you know what other towns use?
We can certainly
That
look.
might be a good.
But yeah, if you look at a lot of these items are under 50,000.
Yeah, I mean, even if you made it 50, that would.
right.
No,
Which is still
I've
below.
always wondered, you know, we could be something at $21,000 and there's all this deliberation and it's all this bull and it's for what in the grand scheme of things is tiny amount of money.
And it's already been scrutinized
Right,
by
yeah,
town manager
And
and
to
select
do-
board, and then ultimately it has to come before the FinCom.
right, yeah.
And
no,
to do
it's only
anything
getting
other
tiny
than
bits.
replace, like, let's say replacing a mower, to do anything other than that, you're diminishing your level of service. Because, okay, are you not gonna mow? Like, are you not gonna plow? That's a bigger conversation.
Right.
It's
So,
so,
yeah,
if
just
you
not so
provide
bad.
those services, you're going to have to periodically replace vehicles and,
Yeah.
um,
So an observation about this rating system, this litmus test and rating system, so 4 years I've been on the CIC, and every year there's this litmus test, and never has anything not been supported. And not just sort of, these are the things that are on the list and these paths are, sure there's, hard questions and, but in the end, it hasn't accomplished anything. So that's the way it feels like to me.
Yeah.
yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rick, but I think they've continued to keep water and non-water on the same list, which I've had a concern about. Because I think those are really, they're two different funds and I don't think a water project should be like, I mean, you can have a top priority water project and that doesn't make your town project less important like that. I would figure something where there's like a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, rather than the which suggests that something further down the list is unimportant.
So would the tiers relate to where in the 5-year planning it falls, or is it a value judgment?
There's lots written about this. There's guides on capital planning. I mean, that's a bigger conversation. We have our own capital policy that was adopted in December 2018. I have some concerns about that. That was kind of pushed through by the then board with not a lot of deliberation.
Yeah.
I didn't find out the board intended to vote it until the meeting had already opened, and I said, wait here, I knew it was on the agenda for discussion, but it was a joint meeting with the select board and the FinCom, and they adopted 5 financial policies that night. I didn't even know going into the meeting, they had the intent to vote them. Like, that's how,
Just to be clear, I wasn't involved.
no, you were not.
By the way, just to be clear, I was not involved in the planning board suing the ZBA. That's a fact. You found that out, so.
All right, Chris, you've been very quiet. Do you have input on this capital question?
Well, again, this year, I'm not sure we have a whole lot of option, right? The policy is what it is, but going forward, I think 50 grand is too low. I mean, capital is something, you're
Yeah.
thinking of a significant project, so.
Yeah, there's like 3 things on there that I think are legitimate capital.
It's between 75 and 100, in my head, what that threshold should be. I mean, a lot of it's maintenance. We had the assessor looking at software and was questioning.
At least we don't have to do it for 20.
Look,
But in a certain way, it is that silly.
Yeah,
That's what it is. you
but
know.
when Angus has the ability within the system, the dollar amount becomes less important when it's going through a system that's
And
easily
it's being
managed. And,
projected.
yeah, and it just pushes stuff out, and then you look at it, and it doesn't matter whether it's 20 or 50 or 100 at that point. You get to then look at it in more orderly fashion. Right now, it's cumbersome. The whole thing is cumbersome, and
Well,
then,
that's
So-
why the reason number is important. It takes that, the cumbersome out of that process.
yeah, no, right,
It's very-
right, exactly. So the number's important now, but it may not be in the future. That's all I'm saying. You know, it's not unreasonable to say 20, 50, whatever you want. But the point is the system right now just isn't efficient. And you're probably not even getting to the things that we should have, which is the look forward. Where you can say in the
Like
next
the
5
plan.
years, yeah, what's in the next 5 years? And what is large in the next 5 years? That's the thing we should all be worried about, not a new snowplow. You
So
know,
that
not-
all get addressed within that, proposed amendments to the capital improvement committee bylaw.
That's the plan, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool.
But, in terms of, Chris, your comment a minute ago that the, regulation is what it is, and, it is, and it does talk about architectural engineering and all that, but that's never how it's been, handled, or it's been this gray area where things like software purchases have, it's. Right. So I think, for these 4 items, I think my thought would, I've already sent to the capital committee everything I knew to be a capital project with all the backup. So I can send them
Right.
You know, hey, here's 4 other ones you should be aware of. Where it's not specifically asked for your referral. Now, if they say, well, you need our referral, well, okay, add it to the list, that's fine, but
It just makes more work for them. Seems kind of silly.
yeah.
So is there? Could we not refer things that are like less than 50,000, or do you feel like that's?
No, I think the 20,000, until that changes, that's.
Yeah, that's-
That's
right.
a hard number.
But the debate is between the.
More the soft costs
The
versus
service,
the-
the resident.
Right.
By the way, as part of your change, you have there's this really weird phrase in there that goes, and or
Yes,
eligible.
yes,
Please strike that.
yeah,
That is nonsensical.
It
I
Yeah.
know the type of brain that came up with that. It's dumb, it's stupid, get rid of it,
yeah.
please.
Have any other thoughts on that?
One final, I know we've been on this, but this is a new point that hasn't been made, so this whole issue of there's capital. One of the changes that Jenny has made, which is a big improvement and will pay off the more real capital. So when you're getting into, you know, borrowing and bonding, that's like really capital. And it's very valuable for the town accountant to be able to run clean reports on all the activity for a debt finance project. She's put in a lot of effort to change charts of accounts and to create that system, because up until her tenure, the town has never done that. So for instance, like the water, you know, either the Break Hill water tank or the chemical treatment building, to get an accurate report of all the dollars spent, she's needing to run reports from different sections of the different accounts, and then put it all together in like a spreadsheet, because it wasn't set up properly in the front end. What she's done now with like Church and Prospect, and you know, there's a whole you know, you've heard her talk about funds, like there's a capital fund. So basically what happens there is she creates, it's a separate fund, and that's a project. So for instance, like, let's say you put $100,000, or you did, so you put in, you know, 616,000 of ARPA toward Church and Prospect. On the chart of accounts, that shows up as having left the ARPA money. It's now into that capital, so that's now gonna be accounted for along with the borrowed money and any other source of money, whereas in the old days, she would have had to run a report from the ARPA line. Run a report. Yeah, so and I dealt with this in Maine, because there were projects that had been closed out that were more than a decade old when I set foot there, that the Maine Municipal Bond Bank would send me letters every year of like, and it was the same kind of thing, and I had to have, me and a staff person spent many hours going through files from 10 and 12 and 15 years prior to document money that had been spent, because it hadn't been, like, you couldn't just run a clean report. So I just want to give kind of recognition to Jenny partly, but also partly when I say there's capital, that's part of what I mean. Like a real capital project, she's setting up in the chart of accounts as a capital project, and that has a lot of implications for how the accounting works.
Right.
So that's where, like, there's capital, and I'm just trying to make sure that there's not also like capital, you know, because it's a lot of paperwork.
That word is literally losing meaning at this. That's just the noise.
By the way, Angus, is it okay to compliment Jenny on the work she does?
Of course.
Okay,
I do it every day.
I didn't know what the parameters were.
Yeah.
I didn't want to get shut down again.
So we need a referral of proposed articles, and I'm wondering how to. So we would refer the items listed other than soft costs, or I mean, how do you want to?
I mean, I think it's good to, you know, the board's asked for, referred all these items and asked you to consider those, you know. By the way, there's these others. My guess is this cycle, they're gonna wanna review those. And I think it's really up to the committee. I mean, Rick's on the committee, he can,
Well, but if that's the case, then let's start out not making, you know, an assumption that they're gonna review.
well, I'd rather just let them know than have it come up in a month or 6 weeks and have it be some scramble where So,
I guess it's all how you present it.
yeah, I mean,
The
I
assumption should
should,
not be that they need to weigh in.
I could send them, the problem is, I mean, normally in a normal work cycle, I would have this thing updated with tonight's actions
Yeah.
by midday or early afternoon tomorrow. Unfortunately, I have an all-day EMA training tomorrow, or not a training, exercise.
Right.
Sometimes those take 7 or 8 hours, sometimes they take 2 or 3. If I have time tomorrow, I would love to get this like to where it's complete, accurate, reliable. And then we're gonna start sending that link around, and anyone who's curious about town meeting, CIC and otherwise, can poke around and see what's coming.
Yeah.
Realistically, it might be Thursday before I get to that, and it might even be later, because I still have a ton of work to do on my operating budget, so.
So could you take capital off those, instead of calling them a capital cost, can you take them off?
Yeah,
I mean, that would make clear that we don't consider
On
them.
those last four.
Yeah.
I prefer to refer them, so you avoid any static later, because it comes back later. They're gonna wanna see it, I suspect.
I have, I have forms and I have capital sheets for all, I did the work
All right,
like preemptively.
all right, well, it's up to you, right? I think it's,
This is the one I should be looking at, because the one on the website's, the one from Sunday. Yeah.
Maybe looking up for items 21 through 41 inclusive.
Other than, the steel landfill is not, that kind of got tucked in there, but that's,
okay, that's your motion.
Or make it, refer to CIC articles 21 to 41 excluding 36.
I'll second that. Discussion, I really don't want to refer those.
I think it creates more problem by not referring it.
well, but I think if you refer it, you then the bylaw amendment is looking like changing something.
Yeah.
Whereas
You just want to codify it in essence.
basically, the bylaw amendment is written as more to like, yeah, reflect how it's always been done. I think we're trying to err on the side of,
Thanks.
talking a bit, and,
So then I'll modify my own motion, okay?
You may.
We'll go through 37. We'll also give the CIC a heads up that those 4 out there will be coming at some point for future.
Yeah, they possibly might lead to something. in the future.
and I'm gonna just subtract minus 36, because I think I heard you say that.
All right, second. Any further discussion on this?
No.
All right, all in favor?
All right,
Aye.
all right,
Could I ask you a question?
patience for.
Angus,
Yeah.
was that a no, Wendy? Can I ask one question?
Yes.
So,
Keep it short.
I am, on 46, unpaid fiscal year 24 bills
Yeah.
in May,
Yeah.
fiscal year 24.
Yeah, all right, that's your question.
Oh, I said, I meant 23, good catch.
Thank you.
Yeah,
It's a good thing I asked, huh?
I'm glad you asked, thank you, Rob.
All right, that was
No,
a
it's-
long
it's been
discussion, but I think it's very helpful.
It's definitely worthwhile, I appreciate you spending the time.
All right. Next item, decide, are we gonna talk about the commercial building pilot program, or do you wanna defer that? Okay. Item E, vote to sign the presidential primary warrant. That's just the pro forma.
I mean, unless you guys don't want us to hold. The election.
What you want?
That might be one way to solve a problem.
Yeah, so it's a standard warrant article. Or warrant rather, yeah, that we have the issue for all elections.
Okay, you have a motion?
Yeah, make a motion that we sign the, presidential primary.
All right, second, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. That's not discussion.
One quick thing from the prior,
Yeah.
quick. So I happened to mention at the meeting this morning to my counterparts, 19 capital articles. Tracy said, and Carol immediately said, oh, we too. It sounds like they aggregate all of their capital articles on a single article that enumerates each project and dollar amount, but there's a single vote at their town meetings in Newbury and Merrimack to approve the capital articles recommended by the capital committee. So we're looking into like, Rebecca's gonna pull some warrants but just procedurally, we'll find out more, we'll report back. But wouldn't that,
So would that be like the operating budget?
exactly,
I mean,
where
say,
you put a hole
Yeah.
in, yeah. So it's just something to think about based on just trying to
Yeah.
contain the,
Yeah, just think about that one. I'm not sure. I kind of like the visibility.
yeah. So anyhow, we'll let you know what we learn. I just, it's just a little daunting.
See, that's all perspective. The past few meetings went,
Yeah,
clean and quick, and people got enough education to
Yeah.
vote. But if this one hits the fan, we're gonna regret not having that, so.
Yeah,
anyway, we'll keep you posted.
all right, the next item is the wellness grant, which has already been submitted and
Yeah.
received.
Yeah, so it's really
Matter
more
of
of a request to
After the
authorize
fact.
receiving or, accepting the funds.
So this is a grant that is supposed to require a select board.
Well, again, it's a matter of, that policy's been on the books forever. When I started, I don't think it was hardly ever happening. Now it's every now and then, especially departments that don't apply for a lot of grants, like the treasurer. She didn't,
Yeah.
and so she brought it to me. I said, I'll put it on, and knowing that it was due Friday, I said, yeah, go ahead and submit it. We can always not accept the money. And then they turned around.
So I just had a question. Does she go out and like ask other
Yes.
departments what they need?
Absolutely.
I mean, I was pleased to see the police department, so she's roping the police department as well.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, no, she's been really good on that.
We got, under table.
Cycling,
Really? That's cool.
yeah, the last round of grant. Yeah, we've gotten a few of
I'd
these
forgotten that.
wellness grants.
Do you have one?
Mine was broken when it got to me, but, we're trying to put it.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion on this, or can we make a motion? Rick?
On the request for authorization, sure.
Yes.
I move we approve the authorization and the acceptance of the grant that was awarded.
All right, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, general discussion items. I'm kind of at a loss on our top two do we have a list to choose from, or are we just picking our own?
We've gotten similar requests in the past, often from like a congressman on like federal stuff, and the three items we've tended to, and those were more like, but one was funding for like water main replacements, because there's no funding programs for that. The second is funding for pedestrian safety and improved sidewalks and crosswalks. And I think the third is like bridge, but those are more like capital or infrastructure things. For budget priorities, I would think the chapter 70 formula would be one of your top two.
So may I suggest something?
Yeah, of course.
So what it was at the State House was every rep sends this out to the communities that they represent. And they want, like, you're gonna build a park. That's a really big
Like
priority.
an earmark.
They want, that's an earmark.
Ah.
This is real, this isn't, okay, yeah, chapter 70 sucks. Everyone knows chapter 70 sucks. No one state rep is gonna go and be like, let's change chapter 70. Really, they want like that one project that needs to get completed or something like that. That's really.
Okay, that's good
And
insight.
what's the response time to these?
Pretty quick in the sense of like, this is like, let's, for example, if we built the playground at Page. If that
Or
was
pickleball.
a pickleball court, that one of those projects, it usually is, they submit it into the budget. The question is, does the speaker take it out or leave it in? If, you have enough chits as a wrap.
What could we, what if the Middle Street Bridge? we
That's
ask
all
them
I'm
just
thinking,
take it over,
bridge, that's it.
just take it over.
That would be my suggestion, if there's,
I wouldn't even go with two priorities, I'd make it
Yeah,
one and
right.
solve, and that should be it.
Right, exactly.
and then the idea is both the senator and the rep introduce it at their level. If it gets eliminated, one, maybe the other one gets it because senators get like X amount allocated to them.
Is there a dollar amount that they're?
There are three, now that he's talking, because I hadn't made this connection, So thank you, Jim. There are three earmarks that come to mind that we have gotten. There may have been more, but three that come to mind were, there were funds toward the playground that were done to make the accessible before we had the whole project funded, and that helped with some swings. So that was $20,000. The second one, we got 25,000 for the Page Pipe Stave traffic safety audit. That was an earmark. And the third one, which we haven't expended yet, because we have another year and a half or two to do so, is you may recall, we got an economic development grant, which was also specifically for pedestrian safety planning. And those, I think, are probably exactly coming out of requests we've made.
So is the Middle Street Bridge too big a priority?
Well,
Don't
don't
have to
forget
fund the whole
that Dunn was in the nature of an earmark. Dunn came about, so that was pretty large.
1.75
It
million.
really depends, I mean, the question comes down to, can Bruce Tar?
Exactly, that's what I'm
Met
thinking.
with
Can-
both.
And that's
Yeah.
of benefit
I would still
to
focus
Newbury
on just
Port
the
and
one.
Yeah.
to,
I think that's a great idea.
The significance, that's all you want.
yeah,
That's all we want for Christmas.
Because
I agree with that.
Does Rep Ramos really have any clout with the speaker to say, hey, I need X amount for a bridge? Probably not, but the minority leader might.
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
Seems it's a new community that he's representing and an old community, I mean, it might be.
so do we need a vote on?
Yeah,
that?
that's an interesting,
Yeah,
I wonder if it's worth so much other stuff going on. I wonder if they knew that we were asking for this, they probably have their own two choices than.
Well, and they're probably
perhaps.
more high priority in their minds than, right, but they also might not know,
Yeah, but
they understand that that's how this works.
And it also depends on what Senator Tar can get excited about.
That's true. Because Senator Tar can now say he achieved this thing for two
Yeah,
communities
yeah.
as opposed to.
Yeah, I mean, that thing has a great look about it.
All right, do we need a motion, Angus, or?
I mean, I can,
I think it's
I
direct.
think, we've
Okay.
got it clearly. We'll
Great.
communicate that.
All right, Whittier updates.
So, let's see, I touched on a lot of it, but, just to give you a little more of the flavor of the meeting, it was, as the meetings always are, it was in their cafeteria, they have a nice little breakfast sandwiches and pastries.
So the important question is, did you have to present your license and have your face scanned?
No, you always have to go in
By the way,
the check,
that either.
the checkpoint. I've never had that experience. They did ask me at the checkpoint what I was there for, and I said, meeting with superintendent, and they asked me my last name, I gave it, and he had me on a
Oh,
clipboard
so
and
she
waiting
had
in,
it.
so.
VIP list.
Okay, sorry, I didn't sidetrack.
But, so let's see, all of the communities in the district were represented by their kind of chief administrative, or in some cases, chief elected official, the mayors. Other than Raleigh, who chose not to attend, and Georgetown, Orlando wasn't there, but other than that, everyone was there. A member of the school committee was there, and I think, it seemed like it was the first time he was really like, direct visibility to hear from the communities. The superintendent opened by basically acknowledging that the outcome wasn't what they wanted, acknowledging that clearly it hadn't gone the way they wanted, and they wanted to
But they had
understand.
still done everything perfectly, right?
No, that wasn't the posture. I think if you read body language, I think,
Defensive, yeah.
well, I think she was trying. I think I think she was trying. She was trying to say the right things, whether she believed the things or not. But basically went around the table and asked for people's observations about, what had they, what was their sense of why it went the way it did. And a lot of the communities had very similar observations. Certainly the regional agreement that was forefront in terms of going forward, and the sense of fairness and equity of that. The questions about whether it's truly serving as a trade school or whether it's funneling, kids to college. It's hard to sit out, it went on for an hour and a half. It was a lengthy meeting. It was for the most part very, pretty cordial. There were a couple of times it got a little chippy. The mayor Haverhill, I'm not casting any aspersions, but she did, at one point, basically say any change to the regional agreement was gonna be a hard no as far as she was concerned. And got a little bit, a little bit pointed toward kind of the burdens that Haverhill bears in terms of social services and costs that, at least in her observation, aren't broadly shared. I thought a lot of us felt that was not really the time and place for that, but, it seemed like, Kara Cosme's the business manager, taking a lot of notes. I mean, I think they got the message, what they do with that. I'm not gonna predict that, but we, that's not a press release. But I did, we did definitely, we all said the working group for the regional agreement has to be comprised of the cities and towns, it's not gonna be of the school committee. It's got to be, that we're the funding entities and there has to be, shared ownership of all that. And they were definitely told that like their operating budget and any future capital expenses are gonna be under the microscope. And they did get a little defensive of it. They said, which has always been out there. We always go to the towns. It's all been up on the web. And it's like, yeah, but in the context of municipal budgeting, it's really not something that's been a focus. And now it is going to be. And you're gonna have 11 cities and towns putting it under the microscope, and you just need to be ready for that and put your best foot forward. And it was really emphasized that when they do present their operating budget, not just this year, but every year, that's an opportunity to build those relationships with the communities. And so, yeah, there wasn't a clear path. It's obviously they're
Recovering those. still.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think it was what they had to do to convene this meeting. I don't think it was like they get a gold star. They kind of had to do this.
Right.
But, I'm still glad they did. And it also, I mean, there's gonna be a follow-up in more of a public meeting where people are convened, but, I thought it was fine for her to reach out to those of us who were there, just to get some frank feedback.
Angus,
Yeah.
isn't this memo from Kelly Jane Klug out of Ipswich?
Yeah.
And on it, she includes Boxford,
Yeah, I was gonna
and
point
then,
that out,
and
too.
then
Yeah,
she doesn't include Rowley?
yeah, I noticed
I
that.
mean, the only reason we put it in the package.
Yeah, it's not about you.
Yeah.
But I
we
mean,
just-
is she,
She just might be mistaken.
Yeah,
It's just.
it was that
the resident.
earlier, it was a mistake.
right, just a resident,
Yeah.
okay, got it.
Not.
No,
Oh, that
I
was
didn't
a
know
resident,
what
I didn't realize that, okay.
A misinformed resident.
misinformed.
Yeah.
I mean, they almost became. That's good.
There's been of legislation
No,
changes. for
they just
regional
never,
grants.
never accepted.
Yeah, did that get brought up at all?
It did,
Oh.
yeah. And, I mean, it wasn't certainly brought to any closure, but yeah, there were definitely a number of points made about the MSBA formula not properly accounted for the VOTEC
Mhm.
cost structure. The kind of feeling that there isn't gonna be unanimity among the cities and towns, so I don't know what the mechanism is, but it would seem that there need to be some involvement from the legislature to get to a new regional agreement, because you're not gonna have all 11 agree.
Well, Haverhill just shut the door on you, it's game over.
Correct.
So you'll never get,
Yeah,
what the mayor in Haverhill's got to say, you'll never get a new project until,
and that's pretty much kind of
Yeah.
the point.
you can do that, that's not effective
She-
management.
She may not be against changes, she may be against the change to how it's funded.
Well, but, it was a little tense. I'm new in office,
Yeah.
doesn't, so I mean, I thought about reaching out to her just to say, hey, let's get to know each other and like, let's find ways to work together. She seems to feel, even though like she sat at a side, we were all sitting around the table, she sat at a side table, like she just seemed to kind of feel not, feel,
Not part of the 10.
yeah, it was so.
I mean, it might have been a product of Mayor Beard leaving out the former mayor,
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of dynamics in that
Yeah,
room, that's
yeah.
for sure.
It wouldn't be a bad idea if you have the opportunity to reach out.
Well, I'd like to on the Rocks Village Bridge,
Right,
you know, signage and just in general, just to,
Yeah.
you know, say, I mean, my wife works in a school district and, you know, she's.
They are across the riverfront.
Yeah.
They are our neighbor, you know, I mean, it may be a waterway that separates us, but they're our neighbor, you know.
Yeah,
And yeah, we've got this common interest in a bridge that keeps one side of the flood away from the other, so.
Okay. Well, thanks for the update.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't think there's really any more. There were a lot of good suggestions, nothing that hasn't been,
Mhm.
I don't think I heard anything that didn't come out of our local process.
Yeah.
Um,
All right, correspondence? Anything we want to talk about here?
everything's in from all town meetings for approvals for bylaws, so we are good. I just need to upload the newest version of our town bylaw that I finished.
Right, and then the letter about the dam that DPW is gonna take care of that?
Yeah, I met with Butch on that,
Okay.
I was curious about that, 'cause how long ago was it that,
the high hazard.
yeah, that they changed that, and for some reason, I thought that was included in inspection at that point.
I was very surprised that it wasn't, because, because we had got, you know, the
So
state.
that was, what, 3 years ago?
It was probably, might have been 4. I pulled all the files last week when I got this because I was, I wanted to make sure that it was correct, and it is correct, and it lines up with the correspondence at that time, but my initial reaction was like, no, they've got it wrong. But I pulled all the files and I gave all that to Butch because he hadn't been involved with all that, but yeah, what Rick's referring to, you know, when the state had sent us a letter a few years ago calling it a high hazard dam, that would have actually required, I think it's like every 2 years inspections. And we were successful at getting it reclassified as a low hazard dam, but that's still every 10 years.
That was actually GI.
Yeah, it was. I was a little surprised that didn't check the box as having been an inspection, since we had GEI out there write a report on it, but if you go back to the 2014, you know, you gotta do it every 10 years, so.
Okay.
It's not gonna be a big cost, it's just a routine thing.
Okay. Future agenda items, I have a couple things, either of you have anything you want?
No, but I do expect next time around that I'll have, something. I'll finish writing up what I started on the, pilot program, the decarbonization pilot program, and, you know, I've now traded messages with, the contact and I see, and I'd like to have a conversation, we got to reply in the sections.
So I was looking on their website today and noticed that there's a nonprofit program, and it seems like we would be a better fit under that than a commercial program.
Okay, well, we
They-
qualify for the commercial program.
But we're not a commercial owner, I'll send it to you, the table that compares who should apply for.
Oh, you mean where within the pilot we
Yeah.
sit?
Yeah. I'll just send it to you.
Yeah, okay, sure, yeah.
So the items, did you have anything, Chris? So if we are gonna carry these bylaws forward, I mean, I just thought we should talk about when to review them and make sure we have a red line copy that we agree on. So should we try to do them all at one meeting, or what do you think? I'm working on red lines with them now, so. We try to do the next meeting. This is the hunting, animal, and probably.
Probably bet to knock on the phone meeting.
Yeah, so once there's drafts that are ready to review,
So we'll get to next week.
yeah.
How about the, town meeting moderator bylaw? Do we want to, I mean, we want to change the number in that?
There was a red line of that already. isn't
But
there?
just dealing with the calling of the 2/3 seats. I think
Yeah,
it's-
I was talking about the other, the number, the dollar, threshold.
I mean, I only, that would be adding a bylaw in a sense.
Well, no, changing the form requirement.
Yeah, that's a totally different bylaw. That.
Oh, it is?
The one I would be adding would be a new section almost.
But
Yeah, so
I've
he
got
just
it
added.
here.
Yeah, so that would be.
But I saw it in the bylaw that would be.
Yeah, so right prior to,
Yeah,
is the bylaw, the quorum bylaw. Would be adding
Oh,
the votes to,
But it's in the town meetings
Yeah.
elections bylaw, which encompasses all this stuff.
Yeah.
Is how I look at it.
right, that's what I
well, that's
thought.
weird, there's individual bylaws within the.
That is-
bylaw?
that's
Yeah.
weird.
I just kept reformatting it, I didn't wanna mess with that.
Okay, so Rick, what were you talking about?
Is-
The dollar value that requires greater than a 40-person quorum, yeah, that's corporate, yeah. See, $20,000 for 40 people.
So that's tied to the capital thing, right?
Well,
They're
they're separate, yeah, exactly.
It would make sense that they're tied together somehow, if you need more people there to approve
So,
capital.
Capital was originally 10. It was changed to 20, this was originally, it looks, I believe it
It was 20 instead of-
20.
Okay,
So you could link them and say, we're gonna make them both 50 or something like that.
no, I just seem like they're, so are you gonna do that red line then? Will we have that?
If you wanted to, I can. I only intended to do the 2/3 because Casey and I had had multiple conversations about it. It saves me time. On the other end, if like somebody forgets to call a number, then I have to like,
Yeah, all right, Rick, if you wanna make a change, can you red line that?
Okay.
All right, great.
Yeah, and I just, it seems important to me, because I think of how many times we've had special town meetings, and we've scrambled to get more than 40 people in the meeting, because we had, something for 35,000.
So you're thinking 50?
I think. I mean, 50 is probably a reasonable number,
If you go too far, I think then people would be
then,
a little skeptical.
right.
So is this is gonna fly under the bylaw that we already added to the warrant, or is?
Well, I think what I would do is I'd probably change it in the heading to
town meeting.
town meeting / elections bylaw.
Okay.
If that's what you wanna see, let's see.
I don't think the number's gonna make a big difference, because you've got so many other articles on the warrant that are gonna be,
Doesn't need the.
yeah, so you either need the form, you don't either have it, you don't have it,
You mean for this,
for that $20,000 threshold. If you don't, you're not gonna start the meeting.
but it has in other meetings.
You can do a few issues, but in order to conclude the meeting, you still have to get a quorum to vote everything. So I think that in this location, the number is not as significant as in the CIC, you know. You're still gonna have to get a quorum to vote.
Some issues.
So, yeah, because every issue isn't gonna be under $50,000.
Right, but the question is, do you need a quorum of 40 people or a quorum of 90 people? And if it's a special town meeting in the fall, and you only have, 52 people appear, and you have, this happened, I mean, it's happened more than once, we're always scrambled to, and we wait.
Call on the phone, so
Yeah, well, calling everybody in your address book, is, hey, can you come to town meeting? It,
Take a look at it.
All right, so you're.
Yeah, take a look at it.
And so, just so everyone's following, so what I did is changed, the verbiage to now say proposed amendments to town meeting / election. So that if you did decide that want to do something that includes both subsections,
Yeah,
you're kind of covered.
okay. All right,
It's weird that they're,
I don't know why.
that's something.
There's a whole.
Yeah.
Oh, no, yeah, and some things are split between page 5 and page 20, but they relate to the same, yeah, no, it's nonsense.
okay. The other thing I want to see if we should discuss at a future meeting is how we're gonna handle appointment processes. And I want to re-discuss last meeting, but I kind of threw it out there without, getting input from you guys, whether it was okay to have the other committee make the motion. I apologize if I caught you off guard. But I just wonder if we should have a conversation. This is both with joint appointments as well as our annual appointments. Do we want to get a formal input from the committees? So if that's something you would like to discuss, I can put it on next meeting, or if you don't think it's necessary, we can just. continue on. I just want us to all be in alignment about how we approach it.
Okay, given what else we have right now,
This is the 5-minute discussion.
okay,
I just don't feel like it's appropriate to have that discussion in the middle of a meeting with the other committee and the 2 applicants, you know,
Yeah.
how we want to do this. So it
Yeah.
might be worth spending 5 minutes to
Sure.
get on the same
Okay.
page. That's my
I
thought.
think you'll find it would eventually take more than 5 minutes, but.
right. I get taking us probably more than 5 minutes now to decide whether we're
Correct.
going to give it 5 minutes.
You said the time will be 5 minutes.
It's just,
All right, so I can just put it on the agenda and not ask you, but I might just do because you're doing great.
go ahead.
My
No,
final item,
put it-
Well done, Wendy, yes.
my final item is what do you think about an earlier, like starting the open session earlier? It's only 8:45 right now. We're done. Wouldn't that be nice?
So that means then starting executive session at 4:30?
No, I think we have more time. We've been allotting more time than we need for the open session.
Well, I like the option too, if you do it the way we did today.
Yeah.
If you need executive session, you can go reconvene after the meeting.
Yeah.
It'll also probably promote us to kick it up a little quicker too. I would be fine with that.
So you're gonna give just half an hour to executive session?
I don't know, I just want to have a conversation. I was at first thinking it'd be better for staff, that they wouldn't have to have like 2 hours of dead time or an hour or whatever.
Yeah.
But Angus said sometimes he needs that time. Yeah.
Right up there, well,
Yeah.
but I think an earlier start, you know, it's great.
Yeah,
If it's gonna be meeting specific, but
yeah. So
Future discussion item, if you just want to do it.
I
I'm fine either
think, I
way.
think we can decide that. That doesn't take a lot of discussion. That's a non,
I think
So
one
from a
thing,
personal standpoint, I try to eat dinner before I come here.
but we always start at 5:30, right? So let's just start at 5:30, have a half hour.
4 o'clock at dinner, Rick, come on.
That'd be supper.
one thing, you know, and with Adam on, I'll just say this with him listening, so. If, this early start triggers any, I don't know how many people watch these live, like, I have no insight on that. But if this triggers any complaints that Adam becomes aware of through CIC or whatever, let's, make us aware of that.
Yeah,
Because if a 6 PM or 6:15 or whatever time doesn't inconvenience people who are watching the meetings, I think it's great. But if we do learn that there's people who like turned on their TV at 7 and we were already an hour into it, they're aggrieved, like, let's take that into account, just.
so I wonder if,
There's
Adam-
something to be said for consistency.
so could Adam put a banner on the cable channel that say, select board meetings are now at whatever time?
Mhm.
Just so people. Thank you, Adam. I knew you could do it.
Question,
What?
the reviewed.
Oh, well, I was hoping to find it out without embarrassing myself. Okay, so we're done? 5:30 next week?
Okay,
All right,
5:30 for executive or 5:30 for open?
5:30 for executive,
Okay,
open at 6
6,
if we
yeah,
need to
that's
continue after. We'll just try it and see. how it goes.
Yeah.
All right, great,
That works.
thank you. All right, meeting's adjourned.